Well, it is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, May 20th, 2025, and I'll call this Lacey City Council meeting to order. We have a couple council members who are going to be attending remotely. Councilmember Vasquez might be a little bit late attending. There she is, Councilmember Vasquez. And Councilmember Greenstein is also attending remotely along with Councilmember Stedman. Everyone else is present. With that, if you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd also like to acknowledge that we, the City of Lacey, are on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian Tribe and the Squaxin Indian Tribe. With that, can I get a motion to approve this evening's agenda and consent agenda?
Move to approve the agenda and consent agenda as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries. And first up on our approved agenda is under public recognitions and presentations, the 2025 Washington State Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year Award. Kurt, where, yeah.
Good evening. I'm Shelika Trevino. I'm the CEO for Boys and Girls Clubs of Thurston County. Mayor Ryder, council members, thank you for having us tonight to honor an incredible young man who's achieved so much in his young 17 years. The Youth of the Year program takes place across the country in over 5,000 clubs and on military bases around the world. The program focuses on leadership development, service, academic excellence, and healthy lifestyles. Youth prepare a speech, write essays, submit letters of recommendation, as well as their transcripts. They interview with judges, and they deliver a 3-minute speech about their Boys and Girls Club experience. They do this at the local level, then at the county level, and then at the state. If they win at state, they get to go on to a regional competition, which is what Kurt Cavalier Jr. will be doing the first week in June. Being named Youth of the Year is the highest honor a Boys and Girls Club member can receive. Kurt's been working since last fall to get to this very point in his Boys and Girls Club journey. He's a student athlete, playing varsity basketball and earning grades that qualify him to be part of the honor roll. He volunteers in his community, pouring into others as he's been poured into consistently. We are beyond proud of him and know he will represent the youth in the state of Washington extremely well at the Pacific Region competition in June. Please meet Kurt Cavalier Jr., the Washington State Youth of the Year.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. This is a quote from the film Coach Carter that has inspired me. I stand before you today as a leader in my community, striving to become a world-class athlete and an exceptional educator who teaches with passion and purpose. Growing from a boy into a man is a challenging journey, especially in today's world. As a mixed-race male, I have faced many unique challenges that have shaped my perspective and fueled my desire to lead. True leadership is about character and integrity, and I aim to be a strong role model for those around me. I am dedicated to creating a safe and supportive environment where no one feels left behind. As I am working towards becoming an educator, I hope to instill these values in the next generations. I want to be what I felt was missing, a genuine role model, both in the classroom and on the court, someone who tackles challenges head-on. I take pride in giving to my community through my club, serving as Keystone Officer, tutoring mentor, and youth basketball assistant. My involvement at the club has earned me recognition both on and off the court, while giving me hope and comfort. The job opportunities, the community events, and the networking experiences have all been invaluable. Growing up in a household with both parents and 3 siblings, I understand the importance of focus and responsibility. As an active duty dependent, I feel incredibly grateful for the support I receive from my family. While many teens often go unnoticed in discussions about community needs, I take it upon myself to advocate for those who are struggling. Many students in our homeless youth assistance program lack stable housing and face significant challenges that limit their access to basic necessities. Last school year, 5% of our members at Boys and Girls Clubs of Thurston County faced housing insecurities, and 51% qualified for free and reduced lunch, which indicates a broader need for assistance. Boys and Girls Clubs of Thurston County address these issues, waiving over $1 million in fees for families with financial needs. As a club member, I have encountered peers who have experienced homelessness, food insecurity, abuse, abandonment, even unplanned pregnancies, some of whom feel unworthy of pursuing their educational aspirations. As an educator, I aim to raise awareness about these challenges and work collaboratively to find solutions. Together, we can ensure that every teen has the opportunity to succeed. I have witnessed firsthand the incredible power of our light. It can be intimidating, but with the help from the club and a courageous spirit, I have learned to channel my light and shine brightly throughout my community, guiding others through their darkness. Thank you.
Wow.
Do a handshake?
Yeah. If you. Yeah. That's good. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good job, man.
So Kurt is one of our teens from the RMAC branch location where we serve 6th grade through 12th grade. Teens of that age group are outside of the child care environment, right? But they need support and mentoring, homework help and activities and pro-social opportunities. And Kurt has taken advantage of that over the last 2 years. We only charge $80 for a membership for high schoolers. They have access to earning Boys and Girls Club alumni post-secondary education scholarships. They have a ton of fun, but more than anything, they find community in our teen centers. And Kurt is such a great example of what the clubs are able to do with youth who walk through those blue doors. So thank you for having us this evening. We appreciate it. We'd love to get a group photo with you all and Kurt to send him off to his competition in California.
So next up on our agenda is the Lacey Youth Council reports. Lacey Youth Council.
Hello, Council. As always, I'm Eliana Allen, and I will be presenting on Pope John Paul II High School. So just last week, we had our International Day celebration, which is always just one of our favorite traditions. We have a potluck for dishes from every culture that our students come from. It's always really fun. We bring in like artifacts or pieces from our culture. Some brought in Russian nesting dolls, Celtic script, all of that type of thing. And we also played some trivia games, so very fun. Tomorrow is our choir and jazz band's final concert of the year, which will be very exciting, with choir performing one final time at graduation. Our AP testing is completing this week. which means that we haven't had any bells to figure out when classes start. So that's been fun. But, you know, it's all for a good cause, and we're all very happy when testing is done. We also celebrated our Commitment Day on May 1st. All of our seniors decided to wear merch from their school if they had it, or the school colors, and it was really fun. And we also had stickers that we put on to mark where we were going, which was really fun. Baseball and fast pitch have basically completed their season, which was really cool. And baseball has already had their senior night, so they got to celebrate their seniors. Moving on. And our track team is heading on to further competition. I do not follow track, so I don't know if it's districts or leagues or what, but I know they're doing something, and I know it's cool, so good for them. We had prom a couple weeks ago as well. Everybody had a lot of fun. And we also had a National Honor Society induction just last week as well, where we introduced at least, I think, 5 new members. So really cool. We got to release our yearbook last week as well, which included student artwork for the covers and within most of the book as well, which is always really cool. And we got to encourage people to sign up for ASB elections with applications closing tomorrow. So very cool. And our seniors only have 2 weeks left. Tomorrow is the 2-week mark, and we're all very excited. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sydney Lee, and I'm representing North Thurston High School. The end of the year is coming, so right now we're all preparing for finals. Our prom was last weekend, and all the music departments are having their last concerts, and we're wrapping everything up. We also had a lockdown today because of a high-speed police chase by our school. So it wasn't there wasn't harm for anyone, but we were stuck in 4th period for a long time. And we recently had our school's multicultural assembly, which is our school's favorite assembly, and it's super popular. Everyone participates in it, and it gets the most hype. Everyone's very happy about it. And right now we're preparing for our talent show at the end of the year as well. And right now we're also preparing for the Relay for Life, which takes place on our campus. It happens at after the last day of school. And it's really nice because everyone comes together for cancer, and it's a giant event, and it's my favorite event. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Dior Trin, and I'm representing Riverbridge High School. AP testing wrapped up last week, but although AP testing ended, the sophomore kicked off their state testing and will continue to do so next week. Our multicultural assembly is also tomorrow to recognize different cultures in our school, and just like North Thurston is also our most hype assembly as well. But the biggest thing coming up is graduation, which our leadership class is getting really excited to prepare for and recognize all the students this year. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Avni Kumar, and I'm representing Timberline High School. AP testing ended last week. Thrifter Line is on the 22nd, and our multicultural assembly is on the 29th. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Luca Freilich, and I'm representing the homeschool community. School year is wrapping up, so I've been very busy with class finals and AP testing. Additionally, seniors are preparing for what comes after high school. So, for example, my sister's preparing for college. Spring sports are also finishing up. I had regionals last weekend and am now preparing for nationals. I also, before our council meeting, had an interview with Thurston Talk about the Lacey Youth Council. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kieran Sills-Powell, and I am the Summit Virtual Academy student representative. We have a handful of events coming up this year since it's the end of the school year. We have a dance for our high schoolers at the end of the month, another movie night, and of course, we have the end of the year finals. On a side note, I had the honor of being a part of the planning committee for the Thurston Forward DEI Summit. That occurred this last weekend. I had the opportunity to recruit other youth members of the community, and I'm proud to say that in addition to myself, we had multiple members of the Lacey Youth Council participate in a youth panel. Though many of us youth were nervous during the panel, I am happy to report that we encountered nothing but kind words after our panel had ended. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Zuri, and I will be giving the Youth Council update. Just this past weekend, the Youth Council helped run the information booth at the Spring Fun Fair over by St. Martin's. And we helped direct people around. We gave directions. We passed out pamphlets and generally helped with the overall smoothness of the event. We also recently held a joint meeting with the Olympia Youth Council for the first time. And we talked about, we brainstormed ideas for next year's Youth Summit. And we are all looking forward to our next joint meeting. Lastly, today the communications manager for the city spoke with us about the 2025 Lacey Community Survey. And I thought it was interesting to learn that the city prints out 3,000 postcards and sends them to addresses. And it's the first survey of its kind in Lacey. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's hard to believe that we've gone through another school year with our youth council. I just wanted to say on behalf of the city council, thank you for all the work that you've put in. Thank you for advising us, and we wish you the best of luck. So thank you so much, youth council. If the Boys and Girls Club wants to go now, go ahead and we'll let you go out. Mm-hmm. Thank you, and congratulations, young man. Yep. So next up on our agenda is a public comment. We do have one person who signed up for public comment, Courtney. If you could come to the podium and introduce yourself and say where you live, and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
I am Courtney Marie Holthouse. I live at 5606 22nd Avenue, so near Ruddle Road. I am a federal plaintiff, a former public employee of Washington State Department of Corrections, PhD student, and a woman who dared to speak up and has faced retaliation ever since. On February 25th, I protested outside Tumwater City Hall. My car displayed whistleblower messages. I exercised my First Amendment rights peacefully. Within seconds of leaving, I was followed by a Tumwater police vehicle. Their own footage proves it. They denied it. Not long after, all my devices began showing signs of interference, which continues to this day. I can't live like a normal citizen. A few days later, I went to the hospital feeling overwhelmed. Instead of care, I was suddenly labeled bipolar 1 with paranoia without any evaluation. Said label was passed informally between two hospitals, Providence St. Peter's Hospital and Multicare. The doctor who invaded my care space at Multicare in the triage room, Dr. William Hurley, sits in leadership at both institutions. The donors of the first hospital include Washington State Patrol, IBM, KPMG, and the Olympian. That is a tangled web of conflicts of interest, not care. When I filed for unemployment, the hearing audio was missing the swearing in. However, I had posted publicly a week after the hearing about being sworn in on LinkedIn, a contemporaneous statement. When I questioned it, they sent me a version with metadata run through MusicBrainz Picard, an open source music app like Audacity, not legal software. That's not a mistake. That's either gross negligence or a cover-up. The Assistant Attorney General himself, Peter Kay, assigned to defend the state in my case, he mocked my mental health in writing, even though I think it's a strength that I'm gone this far, claiming I'd file a confusing complaint given my mental health issues. Sit with that. A state-paid lawyer publicly demeaning a trauma survivor. Discrimination on record. I applied for crime victims assistance. They told me no crime. Apparently stalking, tech tampering, medical fraud, and state-level silence don't qualify. If a young woman's the target, I appealed. I paid out of pocket to file in court. I'm surviving on flash drives, donated binders, and whatever I can get between trying to get temp work and near homelessness. I will not be erased. I will not be intimidated. And if no one in this...
Oh, sorry, Courtney. Thank you. You reached out your time, but you can come back and give public comment anytime. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council tonight? Then next up on our agenda is we have a quick ordinance, then we'll get right into our next thing. Our ordinance is 1677, the commute trip reduction local plan adoption. Scott.
Yeah, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. So staff recommends approval of ordinance number 1677, adopting the City of Lacey commute trip reduction 4-year plan update. So commute trip reduction laws were introduced in the state of Washington over 30 years ago. So by reducing commute trips, we're reducing congestion, which is improving air quality, also reducing fuel consumption. So this law specifically applies to employers that have over 100, or employers who have over 100 employees commuting during peak times. And, we're required to develop strategies to implement commute trip reductions. So some of the tools in the commute trip toolbox include alternate shifts, like working 980s or 410s. So a 980 will reduce trips by 10%, one day off, additional day off every 10 working days. 410s obviously reduces by 20%. Teleworking is a form of implementing commute trip reduction, riding a bike, taking a bus, just looking at those alternate means of commuting. So at the April 8th work session, Veronica Jarvis and George Castillo from TRPC gave a very complete briefing on this item. So I don't intend to repeat all of that, but if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them for you.
Can I get a motion to approve ordinance 1677?
I would move that we approve ordinance 1677, adopting the City of Lacey commute trip reduction 4-year plan update from 2025 to 2029.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, then is there any? Then all in favor of the motions, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously is approved.
Thank you.
So next up is we do not have a mayor's report, and we do have a city manager's report, and I know you're going to flip around a couple of things, so.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and City Council, and we'll do a little curveball. I thought first on our city manager report tonight, I'm going to move up the Lacey Museum annual report. So I'd like to invite Erin Quinn-Valcho, our museum curator, and Jen Burbage, our parks director, to lead off that presentation.
Hello, everyone. Okay. There's my beautiful presentation. Thank you, Mayor Ryder, council members. I'm delighted to be here with you on another Lacey History Month, my chance to share with you all the history nuggets that there is to share. Well, not all of them, we'd be here forever. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the Lacey Historical Commission. I know Chair Jim Keogh is present and John Halverson is present, and I know Kimberly Getz is online. But we also have Vice Chair Kevin Wickoff, Alan Tyler, Tulai Patain, and Ed Holm. And so please stand up, be recognized, and thank you for your service. Thank you, guys. So tonight we want to share with you what we've been up to at the museum in the last year, and as is our annual tradition, we will be announcing the Ken Bosley Historian of the Year, And then we will end with an update from Jen Burbidge on the new museum capital project. All right. We just wrapped up our 2024-2025 season of History Talks, our popular program where we bring in speakers on topics of local, state, or national history. We had some great programs this season, included the highly attended presentation on the Evergreen Ballroom. This room was packed with people. People who wanted to share their stories of attending, going dancing, or playing. One guy, when he was 15 and just got his musician's union card, was hired to play with a band at the Evergreen Ballroom. Many years later, he ran into one of the band members and was like, "Hey, do you remember that kid?" And she was like, "Yeah." I mean, how cool is that, right? Another one of our events that was really cool was the last history talk of the season. We brought someone in from the East Coast to talk about the origins of Asian America, and it was so good. And I hear the after party was even better. He is in a punk band that has historical lyrics. What could be more awesome? And many of our folks went afterwards and had a really great time hearing him jam. So we loved that he came cross country for us. But, you know, my favorite one, of course, is my own. I shared the research that I have done over the last decade on O.C. Lacey, the person whose name has unfortunately become attached to our city. He was from Olympia. But it's been a mystery for a really long time, but I finally figured out who he was and why we couldn't track him down from before he came here to Washington. And I was going to share some of that with you today, but it's just too good of a surprise, twisty, turny talk. You're going to have to watch it yourselves. It's on YouTube, or I can come give a presentation for like an hour if you have a place you'd want me to do that. I've done it for one person in my office. You're welcome to come on over. I'll share it all with you. All right. Anyway, it's good, so check it out. Oh, wait, go back. I forgot to tell you the fabulous numbers. They're actually better than this. I couldn't update my slide because I turned it in a couple weeks ago. But we've had over 600 attendees this season, and we've had over 2,000 YouTube views in the last season for all of our history talks. So I feel like that's a pretty good reach for our little museum. Next, I wanted to share some interesting recent acquisitions that we've gotten for the museum collection. We recently received these two items on the left, the lamp and the clock. They were purchased by the donor's father from the Union Mills Hotel at an auction when it closed. You can see the hotel there pictured on the right. This hotel was part of the Union Mills Lumber Company, Company Town, which obviously included the hotel, which was kind of a misnomer because it was really more of a dormitory for the workers. And it contained in this hotel a movie theater, a social hall, a store, and a post office. It was like this really cool place to hang out. But Union Mills is a really remarkable part of our history. I mean, there were certainly sawmills all over the Northwest, but because of a fire that gutted the mill in 1909, it was rebuilt to be completely run on electricity. And I believe, after doing some research, that it was at least the second in the United States, if not the first. The people who claim to have the first don't have an exact date, but I will find it out. But we were definitely the first in Washington to be completely run on electricity, because the one that claims to be the first was 5 years after us. But another cool thing is they installed this vacuum system. I wish I could know what that looked like, to cut down on dust so that it would prevent fires from happening in the future, and it worked. They had 2 other fires in the following decade, but they were easily contained because of this system. And Union Mills was like a whole community. So it was located on the northern end of Long Lake. And vestiges, of course, are still here in street names like the Union Mills Road and the Union Mills grocery store, right? And then along Union Mills Road, there are still 2 Dutch colonial style houses that are still standing that were the supervisors' houses. And they're really cool. One of them is on our historic property inventory. I'm not sure why the other one isn't, but they even had their own baseball team. How cool is that? The only thing that they didn't have was a school, so they all had to go to Lacey Grade School, but I heard that was a cool place. So when the mill closed in the 1930s, what they did was they had an auction to sell off all the leftover materials. And so the donor's dad, back in, I think it was 1941, when they had this auction, went and got these 2 things and one other thing, which they didn't still have, but they've been in a house in Lacey all these years. So quite amazing. I was very delighted when they brought this in because all we had from the Union Mill was, photos, of course, but a piece of wood that had been milled at the company. The other really cool thing that we got this year was on the right here. You can see it's we, but it's a coat check tag from the Evergreen Ballroom. Very occasionally, we do purchase items for the collection, and this is one of them. Authentic items from the Evergreen Ballroom are really, really hard to come by because they had totally devastating fires twice, and the last one closed them for good. We do have a few posters, although not this really cool Ike and Tina Turner one, sadly. But nothing else, nothing 3D, right? So when this showed up on eBay, we struggled with it for a while, but we ultimately had to get it. And don't worry, I talked them down in price. And I had to explain to my staff what a coat check tag was. If you don't know, the Evergreen Ballroom was located on Pacific Highway, east of Marvin Road, and it was uniquely located on the highway between Seattle and Portland. And because of that, it attracted big acts between those large city gigs, right? They could make a few more extra bucks by stopping on the way in between. So people from all over the region went to the ballroom to go for food, for drinks, dancing, and music. Big names like Louis Armstrong, Johnny Cash, Tina Turner, Cher, and it is a huge list of amazing people. So both of these acquisitions will be on display in an upcoming exhibit at the museum, so I hope everyone will come out and see them in person. Speaking of which, museum staff, they're giggling because that's them, they have been working so hard this year on preparing for the opening of our museum exhibits at the new Belltown Center location. A challenge we had this year in needing to clear out of a storage base turned into an amazing opportunity to showcase the museum in a more traditional style gallery space, giving us so much more flexibility to share our history with Lacey and beyond. We're so excited to have a space that's much more visible right on 6th Avenue, across the street from Office Depot, one building over from Sephora's. Another cool thing is we have windows on the south side of our building, floor to ceiling, which we have to keep covered to protect the artifacts from light damage. But instead of blank space for people to see in, we're going to be installing a film onto the windows that will be a Lacey mural, essentially, and a great photo stop for people to be able to take a picture and show that they were in Lacey. So we hope you'll all come take pictures when we get that installed, because it's going to be a good selfie spot. And so I want to thank the ladies in this picture, Olivia Moore and Felicia Rova Cameron, because without them, none of this would be able to be happening. They have so much enthusiasm and work so hard to put in this work to prepare for these new exhibits and refresh the old ones. They're creating new store merchandise and developing new program, and I'm just amazed by them every day. Thank you. So, why are they excited? They're excited because we have a new reception desk. Yay! And this is a rendering of the new gallery space that Felicia's been working on. So it's just a lot easier, to work in 3 dimensions when you're trying to figure out what to put into a gallery space. We will have some exhibits that were, or some artifacts that were on exhibit in the old space, moved to the new space, but they'll all be refreshed with new graphics and information. So let's see. And here are some examples. We're going to be opening with a small exhibit with our little mascot there, Basil the Badger. Bits and bobs, if it sounds English, it's because Olivia is, and we are influenced by her. It's a group of wonderful and random items from our collection. For example, we have an Olympic torch in our collection, a real one, that was used in the 2002 Olympic torch run because it was held by Laceyite Dave, why did I just lose his name? It's an N, neighbor, that's it, neighbor. And it came right through here, right through City Hall, the relay. So that's a pretty cool thing that we have. And then on the right here are some examples of graphics from the resort exhibit, which is being refreshed for the new exhibit. It's being called Destination Lacey, and we love our exhibit logo. Don't worry, it'll be on merch. You can get some of your own. You'll definitely want to come by and get some stuff because we're going to have the only Lacey merchandise that you can get in town. Oh yeah, the one thing everyone wants to know is when are we going to open? I know because I want to know too. 2 parts of our exhibit are still being constructed, and it's out of our control. Our platforms and our reader rails, which will have the panels with the information on them. So we aren't prepared to have an opening date until those are here, because then it will be in our control. But we're hoping this summer. The platforms are due to be finished mid-June, so we're hopeful. We have been working a lot on it. Okay. A significant part of Lacey History Month each year is that the Lacey Historical Commission considers nominations of individuals or organizations who have made a significant contribution to preserve or promote Lacey's history. In 2023, the Commission renamed it the Ken Balsley Lacey Historian of the Year Award to honor its founder and one of the biggest champions of Lacey's history. I sure miss people coming to me and being like, Ken Balsley told me to come bring you this. Because I'm wondering what's not being brought to me. All right. Our list of recipients in the past is getting so long that next year I'm going to need to cut down on my pictures. I almost couldn't fit it all in. So included in all of these honorees here are last year's recipient, Paul Webb, who is in the house. So at this time, is there anyone else here who was a past one? It does not look like it. Anyway, let us give Paul Webb a hand for his award last year. I also wanted to give a little shout out to our first recipient back in 2002, Shirley Jajic. I feel so honored to have been able to know this woman who was such a force in our community. She served on the Lacey Historical Commission in the 80s, and then when the Lacey Historical Society was formed, she served a decade on the board and a decade as president. And she's the reason why the Safeway looks like the Lacey School, and there's this great marker on the side of the building. And the reason why I'm bringing her up is because she, I suspect, had a hand in many of the events that have led to our next person receiving this award. Interesting. Tonight, the 2025 Ken Balsley Lacey Historian of the Year Award is being presented to John Jajic, Shirley's son. John was nominated by last year's awardee, Paul Webb. John is the current secretary of the Lacey Historical Society, and he came on their board in 2023 when the society was at risk of dissolving. It was about to be done. But John has been one of the leaders in the revitalization of this group, and he got the force in the community thing from his mom, I think. One of the projects that John has been working on is the gathering of all the minutes, bylaws, and other important documents of the society so that they can be posted on the website. And as part of that process, John and I worked together to ensure that we both each had a scanned copy of every newsletter. And we found some that one didn't have and the other didn't have, and so it was a great collaboration. John has also been instrumental in helping to establish the goals of the society, including recognition for Lacey's first doctor, William Ehlers, and the Memorial Garden established many years ago to commemorate the people in Lacey who have contributed to our community. John is tireless. I don't know how he does it, but he's been on the phone, taking meetings, calling people, going places, and doing all of the groundwork to ensure that Lacey's history can be preserved and shared. And when he needs to find the answer to a historical question, he's not just calling me up and asking me for the answer, but he's digging into the society archives to try to find it out. He has also advocated on behalf of others who have historical interests in our community to preserve local history. He's been helping a woman who was trying to get a local neighborhood some historic recognition, and helping Jack Homan, who wanted some changes made at the home park, leading to what will be a historical marker honoring Jack and his family at the park. But through all of this, John patiently talked to everyone involved, navigating the challenging waters of municipal government, and persevering and finding mutually beneficial solutions. And on top of that, he's just a really nice guy. And I swear, I'm not lying. He said, are you going to say things that aren't true? I'm like, no, it's all true. It has been my joy to work with John over the last few years. And when this nomination came in, I was like, yes, why didn't I think of that? And now I would like to invite the chair of the Historical Commission, Jim Keogh, to come up to present the award.
As many of us know, the Lacey Historical Society has been a critical force in our community, especially in keeping alive the stories of early Lacey and its most notable residents. As Aaron has noted, the Society's secretary, John, has played a critical role in recent years, not only helping revive the Society, but also helping preserve the history and actively promoting civic engagement and historic preservation. It's my great pleasure to invite John Jajic up here to receive the Ken Balsley Lacey Historian of the Year Award for 2025. John, you definitely deserve it.
Well, thank you very much. I'll find one hand.
Okay.
Mayor, thank you for coming.
Sure. You want to say a few words?
If I could.
Of course. We know we'd love for you to say a few
Well,
words.
thank you. I do. I understood there might be an opportunity to bore you with my comments. I did want to share that I had a moving experience thanks to my 'who provided his daughter my favorite person in the world, with the financial ability to travel the world recently. And this last month, we went to France. And I went to D-Day beaches. And as a result, I'm reading Steve Ambrose's book. And what struck me in the first couple chapters, and I won't read the entire book tonight, was the author made a point that it wasn't the acquisition of Enigma, it wasn't the vast air superiority, it wasn't the superiority in numbers or the technology. General Eisenhower basically said what won the war was teamwork. And in that vein, I'd like to accept this award on behalf of the society, because it is the team that really makes the difference. And the members of the team, just a quick, I'll tell you their names because they deserve to be acknowledged as well. Larry Ganders is here. John Halverson is here with me. We also have Cynthia Pratt, from a former city council person. Denise Keegan, who has been a supporter of the society for almost as long as I've been alive. I lie, it's only half. But Cheryl Malkmus, who was referred to earlier as a driving force to recognize the Popkus neighborhood that was acquired by the emergency room. Also, I still getting even with Paul for his nomination, but Paul, along with John Turner and Margie Wiley, are the driving forces behind our rejuvenated newsletter that is essentially sharing the stories from earlier days, and we want to keep doing in that. Peggy McHugo was a member. She was the widow of my physics teacher, and he motivated me to take physics in my first year at WSU. I never took another science class after that, but at WSU, that's where I met my lovely wife, the former Miss Curtright. She's here too tonight. She's going to take me out for pie tonight. I also want to mention the two people who are not currently on the board, but Kendra Hensley and Monty Pascal challenged me when we first were talking about what are we going to do as a historical society as it's now coming back from the ashes. And they challenged us to do something that the citizenry of both Lacey and the area would recognize as being beneficial to that charge of remembering the past. And as has already been mentioned, thank you for taking my speech for me, by the way. We developed a number of things that we're trying to do, not the least of which is the Home and Field project, the Memorial Garden, which we're trying to rejuvenate, the Popkus development, and also the Dr. Ehlers commemoration. And we will be back in front of the council for some questions there, because we view you also as our team, along with the commission, in terms of achieving these goals. Because what did Eisenhower say? That leadership is the ability to get someone else to do what you want because they want to do it. Yeah. And so that's my challenge here. And in that capacity, I do have to say, I've met some great team members here at City Hall. Erin has been fabulous to work with. She tells me very honestly when I'm full of it. And I do appreciate that, and we find common ground. One example, and I think Rick can attest to this, Jen, thank you for your idea to solve Jack Homan's desire for something to commemorate the home and field issue. And in that, also in there is, I have to say it too, Rick has been very helpful to work with. And probably my favorite person, because she always answers the phone, is Nicole Williams and guides me to the right place. Yep. I say these people somewhat in recognition of another person that has had besides my mom, had a great influence on me. I used to work for Secretary of State Ralph Monroe, who just recently passed, and he was a great believer in making sure people knew that it wasn't him who did things, it was the thousands of people that he helped bring together to achieve those things. And that's what I feel is my watchword here, is to do the same thing. So in that sense, I accept this award on behalf of the Lacey Historical Society.
Thank you. So, John? Handshake.
Oh, I get it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a recovering attorney, so I don't understand the rules. Yeah. Where would you like me?
Yeah.
Just come on down. Start right there.
Right there.
Oh, I can see all you guys.
Everybody.
Good to see you. Yes.
And can we come out and get a group picture with him too?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And my mother would believe most of this. Well, I did have another day named after me by Mayor Brown. When I was a kid. And but
One more.
I can shake your hand. Thank you very much.
Jen, you have next?
Thank you. Yes, it is.
Just in closing, I'd like to note that I really appreciate John's commentary about teamwork. It's quite obvious, partly if you look back in some of the history of Lacey, the amount of teamwork that went on in those early days of the community in terms of formation of the fire department, of the police department, of the school efforts, all of those types of things. And I know personally, having worked as both a manager and a team captain for some softball teams, that teamwork, that getting people to row together is really critical to getting things done that you probably couldn't get done by yourself. So I really do appreciate those comments. I will now turn over the podium to Jen Burbridge, who's going to provide an update on the Capitol Museum project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Keogh, and congratulations, John, on a well-deserved award. Good evening, Council, members of the public. Before I start, I just wanted to sincerely thank Erin Quinn Valcho, our museum curator. You can tell she's very passionate about what she does. She's also very good at what she does. She loves collections, and she's a very skilled researcher. Thus, the O.C. Lacey mystery solved. So, super appreciate her efforts. And just echo thanks to the museum staff that are here as well. So, thank you so much. Okay, so it has been a couple of years since the council has received the new Lacey Museum and Cultural Center update, but consider in that time, there's been a lot of things happening. The Lacey Community Foundation formed and raised their first $100,000+, and they've been working on a 5-year fundraising plan and associated communications plan. The Lacey Museum and Cultural Center funding strategy committee met 9 times during 2023 and 2024. You might wonder what this is. This is an informal committee made up of myself, our museum curator, our assistant city manager, a representative from the Lacey Community Foundation, a member from the Lacey Historical Society, and one from the Lacey Historical Commission as well, putting our heads together for the funding plan. As you well know, the Parks Improvement Funding Work Group was formed and completed their work. That was all in 2024. Trickling into 2025, and then also, as you know, the City Council recently at your annual retreat reviewed the capital facilities plan and, had a discussion of several large capital projects, knowing that they all need to get done, and discussing paths forward and significant challenges associated with those. And so that brings us to where we are right now. Some of you will recognize this slide from 2022 and prior. The slide indicates a project total of $17.7 million for the new museum project, with that funding gap of $13 million over there on the right-hand side. So the first thing we need to do moving forward is to obviously update these numbers with the inflation for the total project amount and the funding gap. And the next thing we'll need to do is acknowledge that based on new information and further research, that we should consider recalibrating the funding buckets that we've identified. And so that's really all I have for tonight. But with that, I do want to thank all of the supportive community groups and donors to this point for all of their support, contributions, and work toward the new Cultural Center, Museum and Cultural Center project. And I also just want to emphasize how the project answers to not only the strategic goal number 4 in the Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation Strategic Plan, but also some other objectives. And so just to read that strategic goal there, so the mission is to educate and engage the public with the heritage of Lacey and the South Sound region through mission-driven programs and exhibits, and by preserving sites and artifacts of historical and cultural importance and making them accessible to the community. But this project would also, 1, provide indoor cultural and recreation opportunities, which we know is a huge need as expressed by the community. 2, it will be a long-term economic driver for the Depot District there and all of Lacey. And 3, it will, and already has been, providing outdoor play and education. And so super appreciate that partnership with Community and Economic Development Department in activating this, food truck plaza and the markets to get people engaged at these sites. And then for those of you that don't know, the long-term vision for that depot that's already there is that when the school groups come, they can learn more about the history and look at photos and different learning opportunities while they eat lunch, because there's no food allowed in the museum. So it's part of that overall educational experience, even while they're playing on the playground and having lunch. And then lastly, just, probably most importantly, the museum will continue to be an institution that tells the truth about history and amplifies the voices of community members in telling their own stories. So, thank you.
Thank you. So, I'm not going to let John go without saying a few words about the Zajics. The Zajics have had a profound influence and impact on my life for forever and ever, right? Since I was born, the writers lived on the first part of Lacey Street, and the Zajics on the other end of the Lacey Street. And so, not only did Shirley babysit me growing up, one of the bigger impacts that your mom had, and I don't think I've told you this story, was as soon as I turned 18. It happened to be a presidential year, and here in the state of Washington, we used to caucus. And so I go over to Lacey Elementary where we're caucusing, and of course, the Zajics are in my same precinct. And I had a candidate in mind, and I was encouraged by your parents to come and give my presentation. And after I was done, your mom stepped up and said, "Hey, we have this young man here. He's enthusiastic. He gave a lot of good reasons why we should support this candidate. And so I was nominated to go on to the next level of the caucus with your parents sort of leading the way in that. And it was my first time I was experienced my first influence on politics in my life. And so it was with that in mind, that sort of impact, that I then went on to Whitman College, and so I decided to get my degree in politics. And then here we are all these years with the Jashiks, and of course John Halverson in the back, another influence, his days as being the mayor of Lacey, that John was the first person I called when I decided I was going to run for Lacey City Council, and he came over to my house. And so it's those experiences that have really now contributed to Lacey's history with me as currently the longest serving mayor in Lacey's history. And it goes back to two people, two families that are in this room. And so I just want to say thank you for all you've done for Lacey, and your impact is still with us today. So thank you so much.
Is it all right if I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when I first became a candidate about 6 years ago, I went and spoke and hung out with Shirley. She welcomed me in. She was very kind. She sat in a brown chair by the window, and I sat with her for at least an hour. She was very warm and welcome, and she really encouraged me to do what I'm doing right now today. So just FYI, thank you so much.
So thank you so much, and it's just very well deserved. I'm so proud of you. Okay.
Well, thank you. And next on the city manager report, we have Brian Inslow here to recap this latest legislative session, which I think was a very active and daunting one.
Go get your pie.
Yep.
I have the privilege of working with his niece, Erin Jajic, in the legislature. She's a lobbyist in this pretty small community.
Mm-hmm.
Their family has impacts far and wide.
Yep.
Thank you for this opportunity. I've got a handful of slides here. We're going to run through them hopefully pretty quickly, but wanted to share kind of some insights and some results of the legislative session, which I would say kind of officially concluded today with the end of the governor's 20-day signing period, with him signing the budget largely intact. It's in the transportation budget, the capital and revenue package as well, respectively. And we'll get into some of those details as we go. There was a lot of uncertainty this year. A lot of those legislators are relatively new, with roughly 50% of them new since 2020, since the beginning of COVID. They weren't here in 2009. When the last time we faced this kind of fiscal pressure. They certainly weren't here in the early 2000s. So kind of a lot of uncertainty when you add this new members, this new context. You throw in some of the uncertainty coming from the federal government with respect to some of our largest programs, whether it's education, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's our transportation budget, things like that. There was more tension this year. When the water in the watering hole starts to dry up, you look at the other animals a little differently, and it just wasn't. It started early with some tension, and it didn't really cease. And then some of the very highest level debates were kind of the concept of do we need new revenue versus reductions, and then really, and you'll see from the slides, like a lot of the meaningful policy that passed this year was around housing and land use policy. So, kind of go into that in more detail as we go through. So just for context, the state adopts a 2-year budget. The operating budget was roughly $80 billion. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry about that. It's roughly about $80 billion in general fund, which is kind of equivalent to our current expense. So that's kind of the scale of numbers we're talking about. So when we talk about these pieces, there were some highlights that I would kind of mention within that budget context. And we'll go into detail more about it, but first and foremost, there's $100 million for grants to local agencies for law enforcement. There's also a piece of legislation that authorizes a local taxing authority, which again is on one of my later slides. In 2009, there were a lot of cuts to local government specifically, and there was a kind of a change in the relationship between the state and locals in terms of what responsibilities were, and we really didn't see that this year. Most of the state shared revenues were held whole. So by and large, I was really surprised at how good the overall budget was for local government. And I do want to caveat that and acknowledge that there were cuts in services. There are real people that are going to be impacted, and I don't want to gloss over that. But generally, my expectation of what was going to happen was not met, and I think that was a positive. So ultimately, we landed on a revenue package that was around $4 billion for the 2 years. For some of you that maybe were tracking, the initial proposals were as high as like 8 to 10 for the 2-year period. The governor had a very public press conference about that, said that's not enough. The gap, and I want to be specific in how I say this, the gap in kind of what expected like maintenance level state funding with projected revenues was around, for this 2-year period was around $5 to $6 billion. So in order for them to balance the budget, they made up with a kind of around $1 billion to $2 billion in cuts and some other transfers and things like that, and around $4 billion in revenue. The initial tax proposals were like really weighted on what was being described by the House and Democratic Caucus as a progressive package. It was like a 1% B&O on some of the wealthier and some of the companies with higher taxable income. That's the way I'll say it. And again, where we landed was a much more like what I would call like a peanut buttering, a smooth versus a chunky peanut buttering of these things. So within this B&O tax rate proposal, you see a lot of changes for existing businesses where their B&O rates around like 0.47 and that going to like 0.5 and things like that. There is an additional 0.5 for taxable income, the increment over $250 million. So if you have a company that engages in business, it is there. And then within the excise tax and some of the other pieces, there is some progressive things there. There is a additional rate on capital gains over $1 million, and then within your like estate taxes, they've graduated those ranges and increased them, and they get, as you go to like, $3 million in estate or $10 million, they kind of get higher. So you could say there is kind of a progressive elements to their tax package. The biggest, I don't know how I describe this, but there were measures in both the House and the Senate that would have replaced the existing 1% cap with a new cap that either was tied to inflation or was a maximum of 3%. So if inflation was 3% or more, it would be capped at 3%. If inflation was somewhere less than that, then it would be tied to that inflation. That ultimately did not pass. Hard to say if it would have eventually passed the House and Senate, but it was officially, it was mostly officially dead when the governor came out and said he would veto it. So that's something that many local governments have looked to address in the past, and probably will continue to, because 1% doesn't track like personal income growth and things like that. So there is a new 6-cent gallon gas tax in the final transportation budget. It does maintain the local share. All in all, again, look at the kind of I want to say TIB, but I want to make sure I don't say TIB. The Transportation Investment Board, which is a board that provides grants to local government, was funded at $310 million, which is roughly the same as it was last biennium. The Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board, that was funded at like $44 million, which is about similar to what it was last biennium, a little bit less. Rural mobility grants were still in place. Safe routes for safe schools, they received like a 10% cut, but still fairly significant, as well as bike and pedestrian. So a lot of the grants and things that we access, although again there are cuts kind of peanut buttered everywhere, they're still largely kind of at the levels where they have been historically. very specific to our interest, our goal was to kind of maintain and preserve our investment in the I-5 corridor. We were allocated $12.8 million for the 25-27 biennium, and that's kind of what the Washington State Department of Transportation indicated we needed to keep the project advancing. I am a little concerned the kind of remaining $41 million was pushed to I won't say the dreaded future column, but so within like the transportation plan and the documents, the 2025, the 25-27, biennium, and the 27-29 biennium are programmed, and then there's a column that says future. So we've got some work to do next session to kind of like hopefully bring that back and get it programmed appropriately when we need it. So that's something that we will have to work to address next session, more likely than not. Again, similar story in the capital budget. I don't have a ton of like what I would say bad news. I think the biggest issue is with the Public Works Assistance Account, which is a revolving grant fund program that provides low interest loans to local governments, whether it's a city, a port, a county, at like 1% rate. And the legislature has looked at this this program throughout numerous points in the past and kind of sees the revenue that goes into it as pretty fungible. And particularly this year, the state was, I would say, cash poor, but bond rich. And so they took, cash out of here to like pay for some other priorities of theirs, and then actually backfilled it with general fund state or general obligation bonds, which really, it works in the short run. The projects that would be on that list are funded, but really what you're doing is you're sending money out at 1% that costs you 5%. So that's bad business. That's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. But fortunately, it was only set up as like a one-time, one biennium session. So hopefully things go back to normal as we move forward. The Housing Trust Fund actually has more money this biennium than it did last. The Connecting Housing to Infrastructure program was robustly funded, and so was CURB, the Community Economic Revitalization Board. With respect to our capital budget provisos, we had requested funding for Maple Court. I'm very pleased to say that we were funded. We were funded at $4.25 million. You all know how valuable this gentleman is, but very specifically, as the House was doing some of the final negotiations on the capital budgets, Representative Dolio was like calling Rick from the floor to kind of like, now why and how would this help? And he walked her through like step by step and really got her to a place. Yes, and then of course, so this funding was included. So this funding was included on the Senate side. So thank you, Senator Bateman. And then of course it was funded on the House side as well. So thank you, Representative Parsley and Representative Dolio. But very pleased with that result, and got that result in large part because of this gentleman right to my right. Unfortunately, we were not able to achieve our operating budget request. We are definitely in an environment where I think ultimately we are, as I drove in today, we've got a facility out there. And I think we are in a position of strength, and I feel confident that this is something that in a relatively short-term horizon we're going to accomplish. Unfortunately, we did not accomplish it this year. There are a lot of communities that are asking for this opportunity. Lacey is not alone. Within the budget language of the capital budget, there is language that directs OFM to take a study and look at this issue more in depth. So we're going to look at, I'm going to reach out to OFM and see how we can get more connected with them and provide them some information, and maybe, and to the extent that they're going to be studying on this, get them to look at our facility as well. Our other capital budget request, the Joint Animal Services request for $1 million for facility planning, was funded. So thank you again, our legislative champions in the 22nd District. Delivered on that, and we're very appreciative for that. With respect to some of our public safety policy issues, there was no movement from the courts on implementing the recommendations around caseload standards. I do again have a slide on 2015 around local grants and local revenue authority for public safety that can be used for indigent defense, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. We did introduce our legislation that would authorize an animal control and shelter district, kind of similar to a metropolitan park. Didn't get very far this session, but hoping to build some momentum over the interim and be ready to hit the ground running at the start of next session. Okay, so House Bill 2015 does two main things. One is it establishes the $100 million grant program for local law enforcement. There is somewhat of a complicated rubric of what makes you eligible, and I have not had an explicit conversation with you, but I suspect we're close. We meet the financial elements, but I would have to kind of get we would have to have a more robust conversation about the training requirements and things like that, and whether the Lacey Police Force always meets that. But my guess is probably close if they don't. But I don't want to say anything because I don't know for certain. The other thing that is perhaps valuable for you to know, and then just interesting to me in the way it came together, but it authorizes a new local taxing authority of 1/10 of 1% that can be authorized by an action of the council. So it doesn't have to go to the voters if you don't want to. But it does it not just for you, but also for the county. So if the county were to do it, it would apply countywide, and the sales tax would go up. I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry, I guess I'm just listening a little too intense.
Okay, great. No, I thought it was. Yeah. It was. So if the county were to, and I just hypothetically, I'm not making any assumptions or about. But if the county were to do it, it would be 1% countywide, or 1/10 of 1%, excuse me, countywide, and it would all go to the county. If the city were to do it as well, the experience of someone making a sales tax transaction in the city of Lacey would be of an additional 2/10, of which 1% would be held and retained, 1/10 of 1% would be held and retained by the city, and the other 1/10 would go to the county. That doesn't mean you can't sit down and have a conversation and talk about revenue sharing and interlocals and things like that. But the way the legislation was structured is actually kind of silent on that, and allows that kind of doubling up, somewhat intentionally, I think.
So it could go to 2/10.
It could go to 2/10, and it is awkward. The listening public is well, that's 1/5. But why do we say it is 2/10? Is because you implement them as increments in 1/10. But yes, it could go to 2/10 if both a county and then a respective city within said county were to both authorize it. Mm-hmm.
Do you know how that would affect what we already have in place currently with the funding that we just got done?
This is in addition to the current public safety tax.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so and that's actually one of the one of the obligations you have to meet in order to be eligible is to have already authorized or participated in revenue generated from the underlying 1/10 for criminal justice, or any amount of the up to 3/10 for public safety. And I know that you're eligible because there is revenue sharing in that, and those have been authorized. Okay. So there was I don't even know if it was a full 12 months, maybe it was 18 months where we weren't required to chip in 25% for the cost of the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. This budget puts that back on us officially. So that is one of the negatives that were in the budget was we're back to paying 25 cents on the dollar for the cost of training as we bring new individuals onto our police force. House Bill 1811 was passed. There was some funding for training last year. This establishes the kind of the opportunity for the University of Washington to develop co-responder training. And I think the hope is that there's going to be some more kind of harmonizing statewide on what is considered co-response and kind of what is, what are the models and what is the kind of the training and experience on the individuals that participate in co-response.
Real quickly, I had another question about the 2015.
Oh, please.
In the language in the bill, there was just some I want to clarify. So it says the commission shall prioritize those law enforcement agency applicants in the following order. Those who seek grants to establish co-response teams or community immersion law enforcement programs, those who currently maintain co-response teams, and then all other applicants. It really emphasized that, and so I was just wondering what that language means, because I would assume it's kind of like what we do already, but I'm not. I just want to be sure.
I think there'll be some discretion within the granting agency about what that is, but to the extent that we participate in when you kind of wet up behavioral health professionals with law enforcement professionals, that's what we're talking about, or other qualified first responders with law enforcement personnel. I think that fits within the umbrella of co-response, and I think our application, if you chose to put an application in, I think it would meet that priority standard.
Yeah, we'd have to look at the clear definitions, but we assume that it's our community resource unit coupled with our mobile outreach team.
I would assume so. I just never seen that language before.
Great question. This was one of the big bills of the session. And although it does not directly impact the city, there are some implications I want to share for you, just so you're aware. House Bill 1217 did pass. It is statewide, and it establishes a rent increase limit of 7% plus CPI, not to exceed a maximum of 10%. And that is on all rental properties that are 12 years old or older. So it's like within 12 years of the certificate of occupancy. If you are going to raise your rent, you also have to give like 90-day increase. There are some additional tenant protections included, such as like move-in fees and security deposit cannot exceed like 1 month's rent. There's quite a few things in there. It also establishes a rent increase limit on like manufactured homes, like mobile home, like of 5%. So, historically, well, not historically, but like cities are still prohibited from regulating rent, and this then continues that prohibition, but then extends these provisions statewide.
Does that include land rent, like in a mobile home park? They rented land, the space, for $800. Are they included too, or?
I believe so, but I will have to get back to you and affirm that for sure. But I believe that's the intent.
Okay.
Yeah. Perhaps, right? It's hard to find ways to make condos cheaper because of the implied warranty. And so when we look at like a rental path versus an ownership path, some of that additional costs associated for the builder and the implied warranty kind of trends them towards rental path. So there's been a lot of conversation in the legislature about this. The latest bill that passed then kind of eliminates the requirement for an implied warranty for units that are 12 or fewer, provided they're not stacked more than 2. So you could have sorry about that microphone. You could have 12 units this way. You could have 6 by 2, but you couldn't have like 3 by 4 or something like that. But as long as you meet those requirements, you no longer have to have an implied warranty. Which I don't know how much we want to get into this, but generally within the state of Washington, the implied warranty on a condo has to be free from defects, has to meet current building standards, has to be built with like a workman-like quality, things of that nature. And there's been there's been a lot of kind of like legislation and nuance around kind of the scope of an implied warranty and how much insurance for that costs. This is something that obviously has very significant impacts to the city. This was Senate Bill 5184 pertaining to parking minimums, and it gives the city of Lacey 18 months to kind of go into our codes and ordinances and basically says you can't require more than a certain amount of parking spaces. It's got a rubric for kind of like multifamily dwellings. For apartments, it's less than 0.5. For a single-family home, it's 1. And then again, there's a rubric for like commercial space. Some uses you're not allowed to require any. Those are like childcare facilities, senior centers, things like that. That doesn't mean that's what the market is going to want or what the developers are going to build. You just can't require developers to provide more than that. Some good news on the housing on the real estate excise tax, House Bill 1791. The flexibility that allowed us to use REIT 2 on operation and maintenance of low-income housing was set to expire, as well as like the flexibility that would allow us to use it on use capital projects of a certain amount. So this bill passes, it harmonizes the allowances of REIT 1 and 2, and then it removes those expiration dates and our ability to use a certain percentage on operation and maintenance. It's like 35%, and then it also gets rid of the limit on capital projects. You can have capital projects over $1 million now. So kind of local government friendly on that one. This was a Representative Barkus bill. It started as if you had water and sewer, any lot that could be split had to be split. And it ultimately ended up where it's an ask of us to include in our development regulations like an administrative review process for lot splitting. Primarily, the biggest piece is it eliminates the requirement for like a pre-decision public hearing. So basically now, within the authority of your planning director or the planning director's designee, you can approve these like potential lot splits. So Senate Bill 5559 also passed on like streamlining subdivisions. So it essentially requires us to establish within the next 2 years like procedures for each subdivision, and then you kind of like embed that information within the plat and the record. So if a potential developer is trying to look at what needs to be done for that subdivision, that information is more available, and the process is already established. I think is the main goal of that legislation there. This is a technical bill, 1935. It's a cleanup of a piece of legislation that I passed, I believe, was last session. I think it was even last year. No, 52. It would have been. It was last session, 5290. It was around the timelines of permanent processing, and really it's around like civil use, like land use and civil use, and some of those things sometimes take longer, whereas like building permits are actually pretty quick, right? And so this piece of legislation explicitly said, no, we didn't mean to include building permit review in that timeline requirements. Take it out. Don't worry about it. Something else, and you can review that when it's appropriate. So that's the long and short of 1935. Moving away from land use policy, there was a piece of legislation that passed this year with Senate Bill 5041 that provides unemployment benefits for certain striking individuals. So the strike's got to be longer than 2 weeks, and then after that, an individual could be eligible for up to 6 weeks of leave. This does not apply to a strike that is found to be prohibited by federal or state law. And the found is an interesting nuance of the language. So, for instance, public employees are statutorily prohibited from engaging in strikes. If they were to engage in a strike, They could conceptually, this is going to have to get worked out, right? The kind of things are gonna, but conceptually, even though they don't have a legal right to strike, they could strike. They could apply for benefits, good benefits, and then the employer would have to say no, they don't have a legal right, and they would have to be found by court to not have a legal right. So there might be some cases here coming up, but theoretically, it should not impact the city of Lacey, but we'll see. On the climate and natural systems side, the product stewardship bill 5284 that passed 6 years later, 3 different names later. That was originally the RAP Act and the RE-RAP Act, and then this year it was the Recycling Reform Act. But the long and short of it is establishes a process that is actually about 4 years long to get us to have a stewardship program that's similar to what is like available to paint, prescription drugs, certain types of batteries. We already have, I think it's up to 8, but those are probably like the only 3 I can name. But so it's kind of modeled after what we're doing in a lot of other areas where you're trying to capture the full cost of the product within the producer side of it. And so, like I said, I think you've got some timelines here. We're ultimately where we'll lead to a fully implemented system in like 2029. There's a Scribner's note on this on House Bill 1154. It actually applies to solid waste handling. Fun fact: there's been like a landfill in Yakima that's been burning for around 4 years. It's been on fire, so maybe not fun, but interesting anecdote. And so this bill gives some regulatory authority to the Department of Ecology and some teeth to ensure that that like permits and the conditions of the permits are actually in place and being met, and it gives them like civil enforcement authority. So right now, like jurisdictional health departments have that responsibility, but they don't have the authority to actually take any enforcement. So it's like, well, what are we supposed to do? We've told them they're out of compliance. They haven't complied. So that's what that bill is.
So on the product stewardship, you talked about the RAP Act, where the early versions of that was going to require anyone who like sells recycling, like bottles and stuff, to be able to require them to take them back. Is that addressed here, or is that part of the RAP Act not passed?
So this is specifically like packaging and paper products. Okay. So bottles are still set aside. There was a Representative Stonier bill, 1604 maybe, probably not, but on specifically on bottling, that did not pass. Okay. But on like so like wine industry, food, like beverage industry is still separate, but styrofoam containers, cardboard, or food containers, things like that would be included in what was passed. Great question. House Bill 1109 has some local implications here, and what it does is it extends the sales tax credits for an additional 15 years. Rick, do you have I'm putting him on the spot. I'm terrible. We didn't rehearse this. Do you have, it's in the millions? Is it that much?
Well, yeah.
It would increase our extension of our bond capacity another 10 years, which will add more opportunity for additional capital with the same bond rate.
Yeah. So not insignificant. So this is a pretty good piece of legislation for the city of Lacey. Yep. And then just in conclusion, there were a lot of issues that we worked on that did not pass this year. They will the way it works is they're automatically reintroduced in the where they ended up last year. So we'll continue to have some lively debate around the public camping bill, which was the piece of legislation 1380 that had language around objectively reasonable around like camping ordinances and things like that. Step housing was a piece of legislation that would have required you to cite various low-income housing facilities within the city. There was a piece of legislation around artificial intelligence and bargaining, and that had some potential unconsidered implications. The Voting Rights Act and pre-clearance, where if you met certain criteria, you'd basically have to get approval for how you govern. And then just a lot of legislation around not the margins, but around kind of like the rules and policies around public works, as well as kind of what fits into public works. I think one of the things that I always want to highlight for local government is when the conversation gets headed towards like low-income housing and housing projects, and whether those are then subject to public works, and what that means and the implications of that. So that concludes my prepared remarks.
So I have a quick question. Earlier you talked about the no property tax cap lift. For some reason I thought that the state did have something for K through 12 specifically up to the 3%. It wasn't for the rest of the property tax, but just their state only portion. Did that not get passed? I thought that did.
So as part of the McCleary fix, there were special rates established for K-12 that that were above and outside of the 1%. And then I believe at this point in time, those were stepped down through time, and I don't know exactly where we are in that, but my sense is I think it's now back within the cap, but I'd have to double check for that. But I know as part of the McCleary fix, there were special allocations for K-12, but K-12 was definitely part of the coalition asking for the existing 1% this year to be replaced with a 3%. So,
and you don't think that happened? You don't think the 3% happened for K-12? I'm sorry. The only reason why I've gotten conflicting news that it did. So maybe I'm wrong, or maybe my source is wrong.
I'm happy to go back and check.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Brian. I just want to also just acknowledge all the work that Brian has done on our behalf of tracking all these issues, setting up meetings, having conversations, and representing us at the state legislature. I think it was a very successful year. Also want to recognize Shannon being the primary liaison and tracking all this as well internally and coordinating with all the directors and their departments. And then also, the council as well being supportive of this effort, and I know the mayor and several council members have been attended meetings as well. So going back to John Jasyk's comments about a team effort, I think it really has been a team effort that to accomplish some of the efforts we've had out of this this session, especially such a daunting and a busy session. And I think all that was led with Brian and his work up there on the hill for us. So I want to thank you and thank everybody for their efforts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so next on my report, we'll have a briefing and update on the Community Development Block Grant. So I want to invite up Michelle Chavez, our Human Services Coordinator, as well as Shannon Kelly Fong, who will lead off the presentation.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. So I'm just going to provide some of the background, and then Michelle's going to take away the presentation and provide a lot of detail and nuance. One thing I do want to highlight with this evening is that this is a briefing only. It's information that we want to pass on, and that we do plan on coming back to council at a later date to talk more about next steps. So this is really just to set the stage and provide some background and some considerations over the next month as we continue to work on this. And when I say work on this, there is a lot of work that is going on to become an entitlement community. When you become an entitlement community, it's a huge administrative lift. It's not just you apply and say, hey, you want to do this, and the next thing you know, you're an entitlement community. There are a lot of deliverables, and there are also a lot of deadlines that are set by the federal government. So there are several work products, and I just want to name a few, and Michelle's going to get into some details, but it includes our community participation plan, which Michelle has been working on for the last 5 months for outreach and engagement to hear from the community, as well as engage with important stakeholders. And then that moves into our consolidated plan. And we're kind of in a very interesting setup where we are jumping into the entitlement program kind of midway through a consolidated plan. And so this is a plan that happens every 3 to 5 years, and we're stepping into the middle. And so typically a process to work on a consolidated plan can take upwards of 18 months. And we're really having to condense that over a period of a couple of months to make sure that we're going to be hitting the requirements for us to continue to move forward with our entitlement. So something like this can take not only time, but a lot of resources. I think Michelle mentioned to me that she's seen communities where this is a heavy lift of 200 plus hours of work. And so we're really trying our hardest to expedite that work so that we can meet all those deadlines. In addition to that, you have a lot of annual requirements. So you have an annual action report, you have an annual report, and those are all things that are going to come in the future. But all of that is to say is that we have a lot of moving pieces that take a lot of time and effort, and we're really working hard on those. And they're being expedited just based on the timing in which we're starting. So all of this is also being done in the background of having a lot of other human service priorities as well. So I just want to do a shout out to Michelle, who is also working on our human services grant program and also really helping out with the Lacey Veteran Services Hub at this time and trying to find a effective and efficient way to move forward with our community development block grant program, working with our Human Services Commission. And so with that, we've got a general overview of all of the things we're going to be talking about, just the background on block grant, the timeline, some potential projects and examples, some recommendations from our Human Services Commission, and then also just some general considerations. But again, for tonight, we're here just to provide a briefing, and we'll return at a later date in July for further discussion. So with that, Michelle, if you take it over.
Thank you, Shannon. Good evening, Mayor and council members, members of the public who are watching, potentially listening, or will listen in the future. Just a quick overview. I only have a few slides for you all, so I would like to get through the slides and then open it up for questions, if that's okay. So the continuation of this community development block grant dollars, the exciting part of coming to these deliverables that we have is that this is part of the city goals that the council had established. So we are into our implementation phase of the city goals 2024 and beyond. So that's adopt the plan and managing the funds when we actually receive the funds. It also coincides with our DEIB action plan in terms of our livability goals, and it can help us to meet our livability goals. So these are going to be refreshers. I know it's been a while since I spoke to you all. You have a staff report in front of you. On that staff report, I included the list of eligible activities, the draft timeline for 2025, our community participation plan draft, which is required of all communities that become entitlement communities, and then the consolidated plan, annual action plan outline. So that's all part of your staff report. This is going to be a little bit of review, but these are the national objectives that we have to meet. One of these three items in order to spend our allocation. We have to benefit low to moderate income folks, we have to aid in the prevention of slum or blight, and we have to meet an urgent need. An urgent need really means something that unforeseen, like a natural disaster is declared, and then we could shift our funding priorities to that. Good news is we have gotten a larger allocation than originally anticipated. Your staff report says $304,000. And found out on May 14th, we'll be getting closer to $348,000. So our eligible activities, again, we have to meet a national objective, and our eligible activities, this kind of breaks out how we can spend the funds. Again, a majority of the funds have to be spent on capital projects, brick and mortar. We can spend up to 20% for administration and a maximum of 15% for public service. So a small portion of that $348,000 allocation could be spent on programming. Capital projects also include city projects such as public works and parks projects in low to moderate income areas. And I'll talk a little bit about the map that was included in your staff report. So things that are typically ineligible for CDBG are general government expenses, public facilities like police stations, political activities, certain income payments, and new permanent residential housing. You can use it to fund rehab programs and repair, but you can't build brand new housing projects with it. So how do we certify our CDBG projects? Well, first of all, we have to, write this whole consolidated plan. That's a big administrative lift, and the annual action plan is part of that plan, and that tells our projects which we would like to fund for the first allocation. In addition to that, I would do a staff review, make sure that it fits the eligible activities, and if I was unsure, I'd consult with the federal HUD office in Seattle. All programs and projects, again, must meet a national objective and eligible activity, and they must also be connected to a plan. The area benefit is where all the residents in the area and the community are at least 50% low to moderate income, and that's determined through the census tract information. Limited clientele is called like a presumed benefit, so that's domestic violence victims, older adults, unhoused persons, et cetera. And then when you're doing individual one-by-one projects, such as a home improvement program, you'd verify each individual family by income, their income individually. The housing benefit are projects that improve or provide permanent residential structures that will be occupied by low to moderate income households. So this is the draft timeline of what we have upcoming. Again, we have to have all of our materials in. The deadline is technically mid-July, but we're going to ask to have a little bit more time because we are, like Shannon said, we're on a condensed time frame. Typically, you have 18 months to write your reports, your plan. We are doing it in about 6 months. And there's even data that the federal government that's supposed to be uploaded in our plan automatically that's not there yet. So our goal is to get the council to take final action August 5th. We're not asking for any action tonight. We're giving you a preview of what's to come. So we would do a public hearing at the Human Services Commission early June, and we would notice all of these in the paper. We would have a second Human Services Commission meeting in June in order to review the draft. So that's the consolidated plan. Then that would come to council in July at a work session, and then we would have final action August 5th. And I've already run this by the county and the federal government. They're fine with this timeline. One of the things is we're still connected to Thurston County because, again, we jumped in to become an entitlement community in the middle of this 5-year plan. We need to now write our own 3-year plan, and we need to connect it to the county. So we have to make sure that we're still on the same timelines as Thurston and Olympia, and we can all kind of make sure we all know what each other's doing. This Lacey area benefit map was in your staff report. This just shows the census tracts that these areas are automatically approved for capital projects, city capital projects, if they fall within this area benefit. So the funding options matrix, this is something also included in your packet. This is how we looked at, how we could allocate dollars for the best return on investment, considering the administrative capacity that Lacey has to manage the CDBG program. And how would we look at the value for the small pot of money that we have? I know that, I've heard folks mention, could we combine CDBG with other grant dollars? I think that happens when you have large allocations of CDBG. Say you have $16 million and you're a large city and you also want to build an affordable housing project. You could combine different allocations from different sections to kind of build something large, but we're dealing with the much smaller allocations, so we have to look at, what can we spend and make the most impact with the funds that we have. So as you see in this matrix, capital projects, the administrative burden is less. You would technically allocate a smaller portion of that 20% to admin. If you were to do competitive capital projects, there's going to be a larger administrative cost, and again, that's less funding to go out to the projects. And then service programs are a very high administrative capacity, and you would have even less dollars to allocate to the community. So the more competitive the projects become, the higher the administrative costs becomes. So we talked about just brainstorm some ideas of different projects that could be potential capital projects that the city could allocate that already fall in the census tract map that was in your report. And you're all very familiar with these different, there's 8 different ideas here. Huntemer Park, potential sidewalk updates, the senior center, Brooks Park, other infrastructure improvements. Rainier Vista falls in that area, the Lacey Museum, which you heard earlier about. And then there's a new College Street and sidewalk potential project that falls into that area where it's improving crossing and the pedestrian experience in that area. So some examples of other communities that have done capital projects. This is Walla Walla. They did 6 park projects, 122 ADA ramps, 3,900 linear feet of sidewalk. South San Francisco, they did ADA curb cuts. Again, if it falls into a census tract that is pre-approved, that the residents, like everyone in the neighborhood benefits, not just certain people, and they all are low to moderate income, they could get improvements to their sidewalks. Portland, Maine, they did a capital project on sidewalk. They had a good quote here that 2025, the sidewalk project tackles several critical gaps in the Portland pedestrian network. And then we have used CDBG in the past. We had applied for competitive dollars through the state many years ago, and we helped improve the Virgil Clarkson Senior Center with CDBG dollars. Yelm has used CDBG dollars for a splash pad in their community. And again, just going back to why we're looking at the capital angle is because the more administrative burden that we have, I think the less dollars we'd have to allocate. And for starting out, we did have our Human Services group recommend that we start out with capital to start, just until we get our bearings and we get the administrative capacity up to where it needs to be, and then look at maybe implementing some more competitive projects going forward. So these are the things that we need to consider. We have this other grant program, which is a great asset to complement CDBG, which is mostly capital and highly complex and has tons of red tape. If you're a small nonprofit and you're not eligible for CDBG, hey, there's a City of Lacey grant that's much more simple to apply for, and you don't have to have all that administrative capacity to meet the goals. The federal goals are burdensome for some small nonprofits. We have a lot more requirements again, and then our awards, the smaller awards, they're just as resource intensive to manage as if you were to award 3 big projects. There's a lot with bidding and environmental review and contract management, so it doesn't necessarily, it just increases the more projects you have. Simultaneous timelines could make things confusing for folks who have maybe they have a Human Services grant and they get a CDBG grant that could potentially create some burden on both staff and the grantee. So the consolidated plan, we're working on that. The outline is in your report. I think you saw it. It's quite a heavy lift. Approximately 200 hours of work that we are in process. We are engaged. The community participation plan is pretty much done and cooked and baked and ready to, we can use that as a guideline going forward. We would incorporate feedback from you all and our Human Services Commission, and we have a public review and comment period that we need to open up for 30 days. And any comments that we get from you all, from the Human Service Commission, from the community, we put that in our final plan that we submit to HUD. We would bring draft plans back to you all this summer for a final action early August. And then the programs would start September 1, beginning in October. So that concludes my presentation. I'll open up for questions, please.
Any questions?
Did you say that these dollars could be used in concert with or as in-kind or match for state dollars, like commerce dollars? Did I hear you say that?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your question.
Can you use CDB dollars to make it a local match for other programs?
For other grants, yes.
And I would say it depends on the nature of the grant, and certainly, we'd have to research very specific grants.
Right, so long as it falls within what's been shared with us here tonight. Good for all the community, all the fun things that were.
Yeah, I think, some of the projects that we listed, we don't necessarily have a full funding plan at this point in time, but we would certainly explore what types of resources might be available and what other types of funding sources could help with those projects. But you'd have to do the diligence on each source to find out whether or not, you could combine federal, state, or leverage, local dollars using block grant dollars. I do want to provide just one quick clarification while I have the mic on right here. Just to go back to Table A, which is the block grant funding matrix, just to really highlight that this is a tool that we've created to help kind of have a conversation and continue to evaluate, potential uses for block grant dollars. And I just want to stress that for staff time, this is based on kind of our estimates of what we think workloads would be for certain types of projects based on past experience working with block grant dollars. And then for administration costs, I just want to highlight that what's listed there are some recommendations. Those aren't requirements for certain types of projects. The requirement per the federal government is that you can use a maximum of 20%. And so what we've done with this matrix is kind of associate a resource staffing time with a administration percentage. So I just want to add that addition to Michelle's presentation.
Okay, this will all be before us, so we can have more conversation after public comment goes out.
That is correct, and like Michelle's mentioned, we'll be back in July to have a further conversation.
Great.
And primarily wanted just to get this in front of the council to hear the recommendation from the Human Services Commission and some of the background on this, get more information for you to think about until you get to July.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Shannon.
So, are you done?
I got one more item,
Okay.
and it might be a quick one, but I wanted to take this opportunity. We have a private development project that's occurring on 15th Avenue. As part of that development project, they have to install a new sewer main in 15th, and it's fairly deep. And I wanted to give opportunity for Scott to talk about the road closures that we're going to be seeing for the next 30 days.
Yeah, so thanks, Rick. So the contractor's installing about 1,000 feet of a 10-inch diameter sewer on 15th Avenue in the location shown there around Judd Street. So to the right, obviously, it shows the detour. We need a full road closure. It's a narrow two-lane road, and it's a very deep sewer. It's about 25 feet deep, which is very deep, and very slow construction because your trench boxes are have to be beefier, stouter, heavier. So yeah, just progress is slow. And then when you're that deep, occasionally you'll hit groundwater and have to get into pumping and other things. So this will be in effect from, it started Monday until June 23rd. It'll be 6 days a week, full closure overnight. And the contractor will have a flagger on staff because some people think that the road really isn't closed if the barricades are light enough to move out of the way. So anyway, there will be someone there working the nights to make sure that the road remains closed. And then it will be open on Sundays. So Shannon, if you can go to the next slide.
Are there going to be access issues? Does anyone live in those areas where they...
It's all addressed in terms of people immediately within the confines of that 1,000 feet are, they're going to be allowed temporary access in and out. But here's what you should all be very happy about. This sewer is a gravity line that allows those three parcels to be developed. So Ventura Crossing has 68 lots, single-family residential development. Canfield, 72 units of multifamily. And then Cypress, the one on the right, 252 units of multifamily. So almost a combined 400 units of multifamily are being allowed to progress as a result of this sewer. So the developers of the Ventura Crossing are the developers who are installing it. They have agreements for cross-sharing with, actually the two developments on the right there are a single developer. So there's some cost sharing going on there. But yeah, that'll open that up, and it's been a long time coming.
All right. Thank you, Scott. And and our construction design team and communications team is getting the word out. They've sent direct notice to those property owners in close proximity and then pushing out the messaging over social media. But I want to take this opportunity to highlight the council because since it's a 30-day process, after a while, people forget they got those notices, and we want to continue pushing that out, but also make sure council's aware. So if you receive any calls, you know where to direct them to our construction design page on the website or into our communications team so they can respond to any questions or concerns.
So with that much sewer line being installed, we're not looking at a service interruption at all, right?
No, there's no service interruption to the utilities.
All right.
And that concludes my report.
Okay, well, it is already 8 o'clock. My recommendation is that we hold off on council reports unless there's something just absolutely burning that someone needs to say. It is now 8 o'clock, and the council is going to recess and reconvene at the back table at 8:10 p.m. So that's gives 10 minutes to reconvene in the back. And until then, we'll go into recess. Okay, it is 8:10, and we're going to reconvene for a work session to go over our last three items on our comprehensive plan. And I'll turn it over to Vanessa.
Sure. So I'll kick us off, and welcome to our third work session on the comprehensive plan, and this is our final work session. We have three elements we're going to talk about this evening: transportation, economic development, and utilities. And to get us moving, I will just stop right there and hand it over to Ryan.
Yep, and I will kind of do the same and pass it to Dan Grajewski. Dan is a consultant helping us develop the transportation element. Dan works for a transportation firm called Fair and Piers.
Local.
Transportation. So I'm going to turn over to Dan, and he's going to walk you through the goals and policies, the highlights from that. But one of the things I just wanted to make mention to the council and remind you that when it came to community priorities through our community outreach process, both our summer outreach that we did, as well as the survey to the community, transportation was number one in terms of volume of comments and kind of the importance level of those comments, like the priority that we received. So transportation to the community is an extremely important issue. And something that people want to be very involved in and had a lot of feedback on. And so just wanted to kind of highlight that as Dan moves into his presentation. You'll hear a lot about kind of some of the adjustments to some of the goals and policies in terms of like trimming them down and how they meet the community priorities is really kind of one of the more important things as well. So
that's very important. I think you will see goals and policies that are drafted that came very much from the community input and feedback that we received. So once again, I'm Dan Grajewski. I'm not the name on the agenda. That's Stephen Goodsall, who's our project manager. He has fallen ill, and so I am a last-minute substitute. So I'm going to lean a little bit heavy on Ryan and Chris if you have questions that I can't answer. So what we're presenting today are the draft goals and policy, and we are looking for your high-level input and feedback. So keep in mind as I go through, there's primarily 6 slides here, and I'll go through them fairly quickly. What are the ones that are most important to you? Are we missing anything? And do you have any concerns? Do you disagree with some of these? Are they unclear, or do some need to be strengthened or weakened? So the overview, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides. I want to get right to the 6, but as Ryan said, that we did a lot of community engagement. I think we had an open house earlier this year, and then we had some other engagement later last year, and that helped us form the goals and policies. We also talked to city staff and engineering and planning and got their feedback. And then what also informs the goals and policies that you're going to see are the GMA requirements, the commerce requirements, and quite frankly, the existing plan had some good stuff we wanted to move forward with anyway. So what you're seeing tonight are as a result of all of that, the draft goals and policies for the transportation element. Again, I mentioned GMA, Department of Commerce. All of this really factors in somewhat to the development of these goals and policies. And then we have other guiding documents. So these are all very relevant. We can't ignore them. And so they do factor into the development of these goals and policies. Now, imagine the current plan has 20 goals and 120 policies. Imagine this work session if I had to go through 120 plus policies. My goodness. So we've simplified it. We've streamlined it. We went from 20 in the previous plan to 6. And then on the policy side, 120. I don't even know how you come up with 120, but we did. We didn't. But and then we've simplified that to 35. Easier to follow. Staff priorities, best practices, by the way. And when you have 120 policies, you're going to eventually have some conflicts. This policy conflicts with this one. How do you resolve that? So we're trying to get rid of those types of conflicts. Community engagement, you know, we heard a lot about transportation. I think Ryan very much captured this in his opening statement, but I can't stress enough how much the community engagement has informed, helped us inform the goals and policies. So these are the 6 goals. We're going to get right into goal number 1. Okay, so here we go. And the way this flows is you've seen the 6 community priorities. You've seen that before, so I'm not going to represent them. But we have 6 goals that align directly with those 6 priorities, transportation. And then there's numerous policies for each goal. And so if you have a question about the policies, which are the 1A, the 1B, the 1C, I have additional definitions of those. But we want to try and stay at the high level here. So goal number 1, it's all about building a multimodal network. And that means we have multimodal, this is new, multimodal level of service standards. So we're not just measuring the flow of traffic. We are measuring the ability for people to walk, bike, freight mobility, transit access. So the way we measure that's not that important right now. It's just that multimodal level of service is a new thing that is being really a requirement, but well received throughout the communities that we do consulting in. For example, level of traffic stress. A 4 would be something where an expert biker would be in the roadway, and only they would feel comfortable. So we want to strive for something like is a 2 or a 1. So more comfortable, more separation, less stress on the biker. We're still going to maintain vehicle level of service for the city and the state standards. The vehicle's not going away, right? So we still need to make sure that we're hitting our level of traffic level of service standards. We're going to continue with our traffic impact analysis that ensures that developers are meeting their requirements regarding their impacts. Encouraging transit. Clearly, the city doesn't own or operate transit. Intercity Transit is the provider for the most part. But what can the city do? The city can provide amenities that make it more comfortable waiting for the bus or better access to transit facilities. Coordinating with relevant agencies, it's always nice to have a partner on a project, and supporting other regional modes of transportation. We're going to go all the way through, and then we'll take your input and feedback. Unless you interrupt me, I'm certainly willing to answer questions on the fly as well. So goal number 2, this one's all about safety. First one was multimodal, this one's about safety. Embracing the safe system approach, be proactive on safety. Collisions are going to happen. How could we make them less severe? So we're taking the safe system approach. Access management, in parts of the city, we do a good job. In older parts, there's probably too many driveways that can be consolidated, too many conflict points with bikes and pedestrians, so a better job with access management. The city's doing a comprehensive safety action plan. That's an ongoing process. We are not doing that, so if you have questions on that, Ryan or Chris, certainly Ryan can answer those. And I'm not going to read all these, but safe routes to school, accessible, well, I guess I am reading them, and ADA transition plan and traffic calming. Traffic calming comes into play. I mean, it's three things that trigger really the need for additional traffic calm. It's volume or speed, or it's both. So if we have a problem there, we can look at that problem through the traffic calming lens. Goal 3, these are really supporting land use decisions. So it's accommodating affordable housing and anything that we can do transportation-wise to support the decisions that we make regarding land use decisions, and a lot of the type of way that you build can reduce vehicle miles of travel if you do high density with different types of land uses, and so you can have less vehicle ownership and things like that. So it's really supporting the land use element. And I know I'm breezing through these, but.
Robin, you got a question?
Maybe a question, maybe just a comment. We just had our update from Brian on the outcome of the legislative session, and there were some significant changes in jurisdictional opportunities to require parking. I feel like in goal 3, where we talk about, supporting land use decisions that make our communities more walkable, those parking restrictions are really going to, I would hope that our comprehensive plan is going to assume more sidewalks, more bike lanes, more protected paved paths if we can't include parking minimums, right? Because people will have to be able to walk or roll or, catch the bus or carpool because they may not have access to parking. So I don't know if that, we're developing this plan. The legislative session just happened, but I hope that there's a way to sort of weave those two things together.
That's a great comment. That's good input, and we'll certainly make sure that that's incorporated. Goal 4 is sustainability and environmental conservation. Interestingly enough, 4D relates exactly to Ordinance 1677, the commute trip reduction local plan update that you heard as agenda item 8 tonight. So some of the stuff you're doing already fits neatly into some of these goals and policies. And then 4B is new. That's HB 1181. That's a mandate. We can address that about how we build out the city, reducing vehicle miles of travel rather than put the resident over here and the work over here and the shopping over here, perhaps maybe more mixed-use developments. Goal 5, and there's only 2 left. This is really context sensitive. No city's the same. Lacey is not Olympia or Tumwater. So let's make sure that we're doing things in a context sensitive way. For example, strategy corridors, that's an interesting one. We don't want to widen the road beyond 5 lanes to the point where we're just taking out businesses. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So we need to certainly think about how we address congestion or the problem that's in that corridor, and make it context sensitive. The solution isn't always widening, or maybe you can look at parallel facilities and things like that. So making sure that it's really kind of what's the problem we're trying to solve here, and it's something that is context sensitive to Lacey and the issue we're trying to deal with. And then the last one is all about economic growth and local businesses, and so we're looking at investing in the transportation infrastructure that supports this growth. And I'm not going to read all I don't know how many there are here, 7, but we're investing in our transportation plan, and we're implementing the plan with an eye towards is this going to help the economy and local business? So freight mobility is one of those. Mitigation fees, 6F is another one that's ongoing, and I think I'm going to stop there. And so I went from an hour presentation to hopefully 6 or 7 minutes. I did not have an hour presentation. Brian coached me better than that. He said try and keep it at 5 or so, and maybe I went over a little bit.
So my question, or at least thought, has to do with the identity section. If possible, and if it makes sense, I would like to see language that, kind of like how we did like the form-based code, how we changed, where there is some sort of, standardized or at least structured when we do a project, what those roads look like. It doesn't matter if it's a 4-lane or a 2-lane, but the one thing that like a Lacey is kind of this hodgepodge of these different eras of building, and so it gets kind of complicated. Like I know what we're doing down College Street, where it's, as we go down, we're making it look the same. Well, I don't want 10 years from now then being like, well, let's now change to this look, and then you start going down that cycle again. So I at least, if possible, to have some sort of goal of giving Lacey an identity on when we are building what that looks like on our streets, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Thank you.
In goal number 2, not sure what access management means.
I could read the official definition.
Let's do that.
2B. And then I'll explain it just from my perspective as well. Review access along key corridors that have a history of severe injury collisions, where appropriate, invest in roadway improvements that manage access and improve safety. So here's a good example. Maybe on Martin Way or some, certainly on SR7 in Pierce County. You have, there's a McDonald's there that has, I swear to God, 4 driveways. So why does it need 4 driveways? And that creates this conflict point with pedestrians on the sidewalk. And also it creates very close turning movement conflicts. Well, what if you manage that access, close 2 of those driveways and consolidate them into 2? That's access management. Okay. Access management could also mean in a congested corridor where you're now allowing left turns, but you have a lot of crashes with those left turns between signals. Let's not allow that. Make them go to the signal and do a U-turn. Yeah. That's managing your access.
We do have a space, a place right behind Grocery Outlet that we seem to have an annual problem. There's a car wash back there. There's a window tinting place back there, a place that makes great sandwiches, and an oil change place. And for some reason, making a left out of there continues to create a problem for us.
I kid you not. I've seen blocks where there's no driveways. It's all a driveway, and that's just chaos. So, Chris, are you aware of that situation near the car wash?
Yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah.
Safeway across the street, that whole complex is a nightmare of ins and outs too.
The center's turn lane, it's a continuous and creates.
And then in that same section, I was hoping to make safe routes to school more of a priority. I feel like those are our most vulnerable people in the community, because there's several schools who, they're still using little goat trails. We got lucky on in front of Timberline High School because the county had a project. And so we kind of got some really great sidewalks out of that, where those kids were, basically 4 feet away from cars doing 40, right? And but in near some of the other schools, we haven't been so fortunate. Kids are still walking on grade with cars in not very far from the roadway. And so I'd really like to see safe routes to schools prioritized in that section.
So policy D, 2D speaks to that.
Yeah.
That is in here. The one thing that I'll point out too is that, this again is high level citywide. We do have a pedestrian bicycle plan that, identifies specific pedestrian bicycle plan projects projects themselves around schools actually have received higher priority, kind of almost like bonus points, if you will, for their implementation in that plan. So, this is, again, high level. This isn't necessarily the implementation part, so the implementation is contained in other documents. Important to make that.
To that end, though, we could, if the council all agreed, we could make it policy, let's say 2B instead of 2D, so it's higher up on the list.
At the beginning, I did ask for the input. What's the most important to you? And so, thank you. Yeah.
So, if I may, where the rubber hits the road is where we can get grant money to build projects. So, cities who have said this is our priority and that's what we're going to go for first don't do as well as we do, because we seek the grants where we're most competitive. So all I'm saying is we don't want to lock in a priority order that we're going to pursue this first and this second.
Right.
The priority is pursuing
what money's available,
where we will be most successful getting grants.
Yeah. As long as, council, you have this as a higher priority emphasis, but we also need to be opportunistic in what the grant resources are.
So the safe routes to school piece.
Go ahead, Robin. Your hand's been up.
I think it was 6F. It talked about traffic impact fees and the multimodal supports And I wanted to hear a little bit more about that, because that was something that I've been thinking about is when new developments are built and we charge the traffic impact fees, we do that assessment of anticipated traffic impacts. Are we building in funding for things like bike lanes, traffic calming, sidewalks? Again, if there's gonna be less parking in the future, we need to make sure that we have a way to pay for sidewalks, sidewalk maintenance, and bike lanes.
So, or do you want to?
Sure. So with our traffic impact fees, we collect traffic mitigation for projects that we've identified. They're in our tip, and we collect those based on a model that shows like where traffic is going to be going to and from that project, and how that impacts those projects we've identified. So a lot of those projects include sidewalk and bike lane improvements as well.
But the one thing I'll point out, I think Councilmember Vasquez,
Do
what
we
you're
do
talking
an
about
analysis?
is new development. Those kind of mitigation fees do not pay for maintenance. So I just wanted to make that distinction as well.
Yeah, fair point. I think I said maintenance also, but when we're charging those fees, and I think the answer is probably no, but maybe a question for the future, do we do an analysis of future traffic stress levels?
No,
Not now.
No, the level of traffic stress goes more into like, I guess planning out what those improvements would be for that project. So like if we were doing a corridor improvement, we would, when we're designing that corridor improvement, we try to design for a certain level of traffic stress.
But our standard is a complete street, so it will have a sidewalk, a bicycle lane, so on and so forth. So we are collecting for that improvement.
More towards the project, and real quick, you also mentioned multimodal mitigation. Is that the strategy corridor concept? Is that what that's referring to, or?
That's the way I interpret that to be. And so, yeah, I mean, we can cause developers to contribute to strategy corridors to help fund, to promote multimodal, whatever shape that might be.
I think one thing that's important to point out that's a new requirement, and please, step in here, in this comprehensive plan cycle is the multimodal level of service, which is not a historical standard that we've had within our comprehensive plan. So this is kind of turning the page to look at transportation through a little bit of a different light by adopting a multimodal level of service, as well as a policy that does talk about level of stress when it comes to bicycles and rolling in our street system. So these are policies that didn't exist before that are reflected in this particular package.
And as development comes in and they pay their fee, we look at the transportation element and say, yeah, there's a gap there for sidewalk, or there's a gap there in our bicycle facility. So that really becomes part of the way that you use that money in terms of providing the multimodal mitigation for an impact.
Well, and I always start with questions first, but I did want to say I'm really excited about this. I think it's really cool that we're adding these elements that haven't been here before. I think it is going to help us close some gaps. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
And back to the safe routes to schools piece. One thing, I know we have some coordination with Intercity Transit with their walk and roll program, which teaches kids how to be safe walking to school, how to ride the bus, bicycle safety, and all of that. But it seems like there may be opportunity there to have a little bit bigger partnership and leverage that some toward our goals. So
Okay, I like that. Yeah. I like that.
And we've done that. It's maybe not reflected in the policies here, but we participate as far as the safe routes to school bike mapping. So we do all the mapping in coordination with intercity transit and the school district and those kinds of things. We've assisted with like bike rodeos at schools. Our police officers go out to schools and participate in bike rodeos on the playgrounds and those kinds of things. So we are doing that work. We have for decades. It's just, we could increase this policy to reflect that, the amount of.
And goal one F, coordinate with relevant agencies is part of it as well.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
Wow.
Thank you.
Taking it easy on you tonight.
I must say, it's been a pleasure working with your staff too. I do a lot of these plans, a lot. And Lacey staff is just fantastic.
We like them.
And we've heard that
So
multiple times.
Transportation first, now we can go to economic
Thank
development.
you for coming out tonight.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, well, that was our transportation. Now we're gonna go to the economic development.
I can scoot over. Just spread out a little bit. Go ahead.
Oh, you want me to start?
Yeah, it's all you.
All right, so it's 8:36, so I'm just gonna not waste your time, so I will start right now. And I'm gonna do that. My name is Wesley. I'm not a consultant. I am a staff here at the City of Lacey. I'm gonna skip the first couple of pages because you've seen this before. For the sake of time, we're just gonna skip that. But I was asked to put these slides in the presentations, so I did that. So for the economic development, there are a couple of work that was done to help set the foundation for the work, to help us really identify the goals and policies. And these works are here. I've been only in the City of Lacey for 4.5 years, so a lot of these works have been done before my arrival. The 2013 Woodland District Strategic Plan, the 2016 Economic Development Comp Plan, 2018 Woodland District Branding, the 2018 Depot District Sub-Area Plan, as well as the 2022 Lacey Community Market Study. I had a hand in that one, coordinating that work with Wallstrom. And then just a little bit of an overview. You probably have already seen this slide as well, but just wanted to highlight that Ryan and the team had done an amazing job in public engagement. Surveys, online survey, interactive survey at multiple events. We also participated in open house. We have over 60 people came and talked to us. Staff also went out and talked to about 80 businesses in our city. All this work, we took that feedback. For example, they wanted us to value our local entrepreneurship and support small business. They want us to have more night markets events and more food trucks in community space. They want more public arts and indoor activities centers. We take these inputs and feedback seriously and establish these goals and policies to flex those feedbacks from the community. And like the transportation, we have 6 goals. And here they are, and I'm told I need to read them to you. Goal 1, promote a positive business climate. Goal 2, encourage a strong and diverse economy through strong partnerships and workforce development. Thank you, Ryan. Goal 3, foster a thriving, diverse, and resilient economy by supporting entrepreneurships and strengthening local businesses. Preserve commercial areas to provide local goods and service, and have thriving communities gather in place to live, work, shop, and play. 5th goal, promote social and environmentally sustainable business and development. And our last goal, goal 6, ensure adequate and reliable housing, public facility, and infrastructures are available to promote economic growth and activity. So I'm not gonna go into every policies of each goal. I took some examples that I felt like speak to each of the goals. For example, goal one mostly talk about providing good customer service. As I visit the 80 businesses, one thing that they have told me is that they love Lacey because we provide straightforward information to them when they come to open up a restaurant or to do a TI. They know what to expect from us. So it's about customer service with that goal one. So policy one is providing, again, excellent customer service, supporting on opportunity for employees to receive customer service training. And then goal two, encourage a strong, diverse economic through strong partnerships and workforce development. A lot of the economic development work that we don't do by ourselves. We work with Thurston EDCs, Pacific Workforce Council to do the work. So partnership is what the goal two is really stressing right here. And I highlight with policy 2D, collaborate with partners such as the Lacey Makerspace, Pac Mountain Work Council, and South Puget Sound Community College to deliver accessible workforce training opportunity to Lacey community members. That's just one of the 5 goals that we have for, one of the 5 policies we have for that goal. And then goal 3, fostering a thriving, diverse, and resilient economy by supporting entrepreneurship and strengthening local business. Again, this is all about entrepreneurship and small business. And the mayor usually signs a welcome letter every month. And I do a report through the Department of Revenues, and we have about a good 40% of our new business licenses are home-based businesses. So this is going to that supporting small business and entrepreneurships. And so just wanted to highlight 2 of the 5 policies in this goal. Policy 3A encourages stable and expansion of existing business while attracting new enterprise that reflect community value and provide living wage job opportunities. And then policy 3E, advance initiatives that nurture new entrepreneur and support their growth, such as the food truck depot and the night market. Goal 4. Sorry, turn the page, you probably can read the goal. So I'm just gonna highlight the 2 policies relating to goal 4. Integrate placemaking effort through thoughtful architect, public arts, and site planning. Policy 4C, led efforts in Midtown to create a vibrant space, boost economic growth, and enhance the neighborhood through strategic planning, innovative designs, and collaboration with partners. Then goal 5, which is related to climate and sustainability. Policy 5A, encourage/recruit business that provide products and services that support resource conservation, environmental stewardship, and reductions of greenhouse gas emission. Prior to this week, we were at the Planning Commission meeting last week, and one of the stories I shared with them is that the Thurston Green Business just had an award a couple months ago, and 4 of the award, 3 of them were from the city of Lacey. So Echoes and Top Rungs were recognized for small business and medium business for being a steward of water and cleaning product they were selling at Echo. So that's just an example of as it relates to policy 5A. And then finally, goal 6, which is ensure adequate and reliable housing, public facility, and infrastructures are available to promote economic growth and activities. And I select policy 6A, continue to work with local partners and state to ensure adequate utilities and infrastructures are provided to meet the needs of current and future businesses. And most of the business I talk to, utility includes internet. Even the food trucks out there with the POS, they need the internet to be able to process their payment. So internet is part of that, and I advocate for that for those folks. So, and then that's conclude all the policies and goals for economic development.
So, thanks. One of the things that I know that I guess it's maybe implied with the partnerships, but the Port of Olympia is supposed to be an economic development driver for us, and we had a goal at one point of working with them to provide some incubator space, and that sort of went away. But it should be nice to sort of re-engage with the port and see if we can work together on some of the gaps that we're missing. A lot of the stuff what we're doing even with this last one with ensure that there's adequate infrastructures to go through our commercial areas and ensure that there is a proper amount of the ability for growth there, because like for example in the Midtown, we know that there may need to be upgrades for sewer and some other things, and so sort of be proactive on that so that we're not prohibiting economic growth because the infrastructure needs aren't there.
Exactly.
Be proactive on that.
Exactly.
And so, but I'm not sure if we've done any sort of studies to see where the gaps are in our commercial areas.
No, that speak to that, and we definitely will work to.
Have we done a study about that?
We have some information from our past like sewer and wastewater plan, but those sewer and wastewater plans are also due to be updated coming soon. And that'd be a focus of those areas to match up with their land use patterns. We do know, like in the Midtown area, that area was originally designed for office space, and so we knew that like for instance, the sewer line was undersized for future residential flows. As part of their development, MGR did upgrade those sewers, but we need to also identify if we're going to focus certain types of development intensities in certain areas. We have to have the infrastructure support. It goes with, we talk about streets a lot, but it's also the underground infrastructure as well. But that should be coming in through our sewer and water plan updates, is focusing on that existing need.
Does anyone have any questions?
I remember a little while back, we went over a presentation about kind of revitalizing some stuff down, I think it was Lacey Boulevard or like, I think a big part of what we should be thinking about too is really, kind of refacing some of the older buildings and giving, something in there about really trying to promote, upgrading or, I'm looking here and seeing if I don't see it, maybe it's in there already, but
It's
just.
in the budget. We have that.
No, that, I know, but I'm saying an emphasis in our plan to say like, hey, we also want to not just attract new businesses, but we want to make sure that like our current businesses, maybe they're in an older building, we have programs like that to help and I think that would go a long way, because you drive down Lacey Boulevard and you kind of, you're like, we want to do the museum, we want to do these things, but then you kind of like, oh man, we can, and just a little bit of touch up, I think, could go a long way. So at least a focus somewhere in there.
Well, and also a sort of a program where we're responding to like graffiti and other things, and we're making sure it's a clean and inviting in our areas, and that we have some sort of program to help with that. There's nothing worse than if you're a business owner and then something's happened to your business. Graffiti or otherwise, and now you have that cost and everything else that goes on top of it. It just really is an ongoing. We should be able to partner with the city on help mitigate, some of that.
And I was thinking too, I was going to kind of talk about safety too, because we have had times where especially like I have a business in Hawks Prairie where I know my businesses are shutting down because people are they're just having lots of issues. Thefts, break-ins, just things like that. And so I think part of that is making sure that we have businesses that feel safe being in an area. I shut down a business in Spanaway 100% because of safety issues.
Right.
So I definitely think like that's an important part of that's a part of that promoting a positive business climate, but I don't see the safety portion in here anyway.
I think we could probably add a policy somewhere that talks about safety with businesses, if the council agrees
Absolutely,
on
that's,
that front.
it's one of the things that we even hear from local businesses, that they're concerned about either safety or what they see as perceived safety, right? Which is I know the difference between the two, but for them, they're feeling like if we can put more resources on the safety side of things, that would help them.
And it goes in waves and cycles and areas, and it's just, sometimes it might be a little better right now, so we don't focus on it as much, but just,
Yeah,
we have
I
some
think it makes
sort of.
sense. It's missing, I agree.
One day I got to work and I was
Oh, if I told you the stories of span away.
And I think police already have emphasis patrols going on, but it's just marrying what they're already doing with,
Agreed.
into the plan.
And that does hit a community priority as well, so it will be able to connect all those dots, absolutely. So we'll work on something that kind of hits that mark to add to this.
Okay.
Okay.
If I can just kind of highlight something going back to the Port of Olympia too, is with the recent staffing increases and coming back to the port, we have a partnership that's a multi-county, multi-agency with the foreign trade zone, with the Port of Olympia being the lead. There's talk at the port to figure out how to resurrect that board and bring that up, especially nowadays with the need for more opportunities to defray customs and tariffs. So there's going to be some movement in the coming months of reforming that board, reaching out to all the various partners that are participants in the foreign trade zone and moving that forward. And that can be something, again, we can build as a platform and developing that partnership again with the port and some economic development activities.
I mean, that's almost a goal too. I mean, that is almost along the lines of something that we should be striving to as a goal, is to.
And we have a partnership goal. We haven't
I saw
called
that.
out the port in the list. We've called out others. We could add Port of Olympia to the list if the council wants us to do that.
I think so.
Yeah.
Does that sound
Okay,
good?
we'll do that. Absolutely.
I think it would be important to highlight the foreign trade zone too. I mean, I think
That was
something that's
such,
been-
a while back, that was a huge deal. And then sort of, because of a couple different things, it sort of.
One of our active users right now is Callus and Mint Oil, and we worked with them for quite some time to look at the mechanics, and it actually saved them quite a bit on cash flow. And that's, everybody might know that they're the #1 exporter of mint oil around the world. So it helps with our cash flow.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
One thing I don't see called out in here, and I think it should be, is, I'm not quite sure how to frame it, but it's to do with minority-owned business.
I guess it's the diverse and resilient economy, right, supporting entrepreneurships and it's that goal under goal three.
Goal 3.
I mean, we have had a goal of reaching out to the BIPOC community specifically,
And the EDC's been doing a lot of work in that area.
Yeah.
And so is the chamber.
So as long as that's sort of
I'd really
under
like to see
that
that
goal.
articulated more firmly.
I would include veteran in there too.
Definitely.
So I would combine both of those and really just, make that an emphasis.
Under that goal 3.
Under it. So just making sure I've got
The veterans,
BIPOC.
yeah.
Okay, so maybe a new goal that talks about that new policy that talks
Policy.
about that specifically.
Yeah.
And I'm getting head nods.
I saw
from
Councilman
everybody.
Vasquez
Okay.
head nod and.
Okay, thank you, awesome, okay.
And then somewhere in here, it was talking about indoor activity, and the need for it, the gap in the.
Yeah,
in the
it's just
area.
some of the things that we heard from our community when we did outreach.
Yeah, I think we should, after the discussion question, it says, hey, is there anything that you want to strengthen? And I would like to see that strengthen a little bit. I know we've kind of been waiting for the tribe to,
See what's
get
going
started, so we can see what kind of gaps are gonna happen. I am more in favor of, beating them to the punch, but, I know that, inviting those businesses to the community, I'd like to strengthen that portion. Because I think we have we just have a ton of disposable income in this community, and nowhere for people to really spend it which is the unfortunate part. I mean, you can go to the Children's Hands-On Museum, or you can go to Insert Klein.
And we're starting, there's a few, so we're getting the baseball training facility across the way. So it's like, you're right on that door.
Yeah.
But we definitely need to make sure that, once you build it, okay, can we keep that ball rolling?
Because we got a ton of incredible outdoor stuff, and we're actually getting more incredible outdoor stuff with the Cuyo Park. It's the indoor stuff that we just can't, we haven't really ever given people opportunity to spend those dollars with us. So they leave the community and they go to other communities and spend the dollars where there is some indoor things to do.
I know Tumwater's really pushing that hard too, and if they do it before we do, I'm gonna be.
Yeah, when they open the trampoline park down there, I didn't know people would pay to jump on a trampoline, but it seemed to work for them.
Was it Boom Shaka or something like that? Yeah, they've been. Well, we did have a facility like that in Lacey,
Charlie Safari, or?
Yeah, Charlie Safari.
Yeah. And they relocated and lost their lease and then relocated and then they, in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they had a lot of leasing issues from what I heard.
So maybe a little strength in that area.
Yeah, and I definitely can work on it. So thank you. We've taken notes.
More like business recruitment is what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure I've got it right.
Yeah.
For indoor, that's been a long time, I think, goal for the region for this.
Remember when we looked at the basketball and volleyball courts and the price tag was up there a little bit.
Okay, sound good? Then let's go into our last one, which is our utilities, which is pretty straightforward, but I'll turn it over.
No, we shared the.
I'll say that now, it's gonna be long.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty straightforward.
The most exciting one for last.
Thanks, Wesley.
Nothing like utilities.
Okay, so moving on to utilities, last but not least here on the schedule. So the reason we have a utilities element to begin with really is that it's a GMA required element. So it really is supporting kind of two different utilities. First of all, our own municipal utilities. So obviously, we have our own water, wastewater, stormwater, reclaimed water utility plans, which each have their own capital facilities plan. So really, this kind of is the overarching kind of like goal and policy around how our utilities kind of function. But then also it coordinates with the private utilities. So that's things like our electrical, natural gas, cable, and telecommunications as well. And so that's things like we've talked about in the past, undergrounding of power and some of those supporting policies and those kinds of things around coordination with the private utilities that exist within our community. This is not really what's in front of you, not a lot of new information. It's essentially kind of been pared down. I'll go through just some of the highlights with you. Most of them are from the 2016 plan that are existing. We've removed some overlapping policies. And we've also removed references to programs that have been completed or are no longer a priority. The ones that are no longer a priority are an example of that would have appeared in the 2016 plan that don't appear in this are the water line leak detection program. And so this was a high priority 10, 15, 20 years ago where the city was losing a substantial amount of its water through leaks. And so we went through and unauthorized water usage by contractors and by others. And so we kind of cinched all that stuff up. And then also we had a leak detection program that went around town, used different systems to kind of figure out where those leaks were happening and then replace pipes. Our leaks before were in the 15 to 20% range. We were losing that much of our water to leaks. We're now under 10%, which is a reasonable amount of water to be losing in a water system that's our size. So no longer a priority, so that's recommended to be removed. The other example of something that's been essentially completed at this point is the water rights associated with the Olympia Brewery. So the water rights that were associated with the old Olympia Brewery were a priority for the communities, Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater to obtain after the brewery went defunct. And so again, that's no longer an issue. And so that's been removed from the goals and policies that were existing in 2016. couple of things that I wanted to highlight for you is that we added a goal 9, which is really related to HB 1181. So that's our climate greenhouse gas reduction goals as a organization. And so we added a new goal 9, which is to increase the efficiency of water and wastewater infrastructure. And so the couple policies associated with this are, first of all, that we conduct efficiency improvements to our water and sewer systems and prioritize replacements of components that consume the most energy and have high greenhouse gas emissions. So as a community, I think our water pumping, so water including wastewater pumping, is our 3rd highest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So the top 2 are buildings and transportation. So number 3 is our pumping utilities. So basically what this is saying is that as components are phased out, or as we do analysis showing which are the highest energies, we phase those out and go with components that are the most energy efficient. And then encourage conservation of energy in city utility facilities. So city utility facilities could be like things like pump houses, well houses, and those kinds of things. So things that are beyond just our city buildings, but our buildings that are out in the community.
Lift stations.
Lift stations, yeah, another example of that. Yep. And then goal 10, which was an existing policy, encourage provisions for land resources for utility. We did add a new policy here, policy 10B, which is to coordinate regionally to develop regulations for battery energy storage locations that carefully consider appropriate areas for siting of facilities. So I don't know if you all are familiar with kind of what a battery energy storage facility is, but it's basically a collection of batteries, large batteries that pull, in times of low demand, pull energy off the grid to be stored and used at times of high demand. And there is somewhat of a risk associated with those facilities, especially around certain land uses, from a safety standpoint. If one was to catch fire or something like that, it could impact other land uses. And so we have a policy in here, and we're actually underway on a process right now to coordinate Thurston County wide on consistent regulations that would apply across all of our jurisdictions as far as where those things can and can't be located. So we've recognized that in the policy there.
We did just have a presentation by Wright.
The applicant down in the county.
Yeah. Came to the EDC with their proposal to do a battery storage facility just south of Tenino. That would be able to consume and store during off-peak hours and redistribute during peak hours, kind of a capacitor of sorts. $200 million capacitor.
It's new technology, and so that's why, it wasn't reflected in the past in our goals and policies, and also why we have this interagency work group to develop rules and regulations for those, because again, the private sector has a tendency to get ahead of our regulations, right? So, which is probably a good thing, right? They're innovative, but we're playing catch up a little bit to make sure that we have the right rules in place. So
and I think my goal in coming, speaking on this section is just, we don't have to reinvent.
No.
So there's already a kind of a template for us.
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask this question since I don't think Councilmember Stedman is with us at this moment, but I know a priority that he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'll talk to you on your behalf, and it's something that Councilmember Stedman has been talking about for a long time, and we just have not feel like we haven't taken the next step for discussion, is to give notice for our refuse and recycling, because we know that there can be some savings if we went out to bid on that, but there's a whole process to do that, and we've had these these conversations, but we've never taken the next step. So can we have that conversation, and should it be in one of our goals or policies?
Not necessarily in here. There might be the opportunity to include some type of goal policy of work related to solid waste, but actually reviewing our current contracts is one of the pieces it's embedded in our work plan that we'll be bringing back to council later this year look at that particular issue of reviewing our contracts and seeing if there's opportunity to open that up and do an RFQ.
Okay, so we'll at least get a work session out of that here coming soon?
Yes, it'll be come back to a council work session once it's part of the work plan, the revenue enhancement strategies, where we're going to be looking at various things from technology fees, public records fees, and we're going to be looking at those type of contracts with solid waste and franchise to see if that's an opportunity to look at opening those up and being able to address those issues that I brought up before council.
Okay.
Where are we timeline wise? Because I know we have to give years of notice if we are going to do something like that.
Don't know yet. We still have to go into the existing contracts and see what they say and bring that information back to council.
I think I speak for Councilmember Stedman that he's been talking about this for a long time, and we just haven't seen very much movement on it.
And it was highlighted at the council retreat and is brought into the work plan as one of the strategies going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to miss that window if we are.
So that's one thing that's in process. It wouldn't necessarily be in these utility element goals and policies. That's an action item, but there could be language in there that could support those efforts.
Well, and I would encourage that there be some language in that. I mean, in any case where we can find savings for our community through contract negotiation or something along those lines, because
and ensuring solid waste is coordinated and there's whatever efficiencies out of that program.
Yeah. Because the cost of utilities is something that I've been stressing for a long time. It's just something that keeps going up and up and up, and it's usually the largest increase for some households year over year. So anyway, there should be a goal to find ways we can reduce the burden of our cost of utilities, whether it's through programs or through going through different, doing an RFQ to decrease the costs. Something that like those lines should be spelled out as either a goal or something along those lines. So I'm not sure where that would go in here, but I would like to see that something along those lines.
Did we have a solar element in?
We have a climate element. Yeah, that was our first session.
Yeah.
We talked about it, but there's a possibility it would be connected. If that's kind of where you're going. Yeah, I could see that, some connectivity there. So what I'm writing down, and maybe Ryan's got it going here too, is some policy or goal that really addresses solid waste and recycling and looking at that provider from a lens of continual review over time.
Well, yeah, I mean, along those lines, I guess where we're really coming from is, the reason why this is important, because there could be some savings to our residents, and I mean
there's a couple of different policies I think you can put under there too, is savings, efficiencies and savings, waste reduction strategies, those type of things. That go back to then everything being connected and linked back together, like the climate and other elements, housing around you. So.
Well, and we just don't. I mean, there's a lot of things that we talk about on the other side of things, where we're trying to find savings for our community. This is maybe one that we could, reducing the burden, whether it's through finding solar or other things, but to reduce the cost of utilities for our customers, for our residents and businesses. Okay.
Good. Nods from everybody. Okay.
Nods from everyone?
I think Ryan and I together
Yeah.
we'll get something
We'll get
together.
something
We
together.
will pull
We'll
that
figure that
together.
out.
Yeah.
Reduce costs. Reduce costs.
Bobbleheads. I love it.
Okay. Well, that's it.
So if I could just kind of cap this off with next steps, if there's nothing more on anything else you've heard tonight.
I'd say just add extra different services too, added services. That goes along with saving money as well.
Yeah, I think all contracts, all services.
Okay.
So This concludes your review. The Planning Commission completed their review last week. So the next steps, the immediate next steps, we are going to package everything together, and the Commission on Equity will be reviewing all of the goals and policies at their meeting coming up on June 2nd. From there, we are then aggregating all the policies together and then making basically a first draft of the comprehensive plan available to the community. Our target goal for that is July 1st. And so we are to the point of almost releasing a draft comprehensive plan, which is fantastic news. From there, we're going to then do another roadshow this summer to get community feedback on the greater kind of the comprehensive plan draft, with public hearings scheduled probably for the fall with the Planning Commission, and then coming to the council for your consideration in the late fall, early winter. We want to meet our December 31st, 2025 deadline is our goal. So that's where we're at this point. We're close, like I said, to releasing that draft, and that's going to be one of the next important steps.
So you'll have a nice little exhale over the summer and then come back this fall, be right back at it.
Pull it together.
Another comprehensive plan.
And then, you know, just Ryan Council, that's also gonna be with a lot of other things too, including budget process, so we're gonna be making a big push.
As planners, we count how many comprehensive plans are we gonna do in our career.
Yep.
You usually can count them on one hand.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And showing master programs.
Yeah, that too, that too.
This is impressive work, guys. It really is.
Oh, it's I mean,
Ryan and his team.
We'll end where we began. It's really much a team effort, you know, and many thanks to, you know, everybody around this table, but, you know, obviously all the other staff that you've heard along the way. You know, big thanks to Hans and Jennifer and Lindsay and Wesley and Sarah and you know, everybody else, the public works staff as well. You know, this isn't just one or two people. This is the whole team that you have here that's assembled, that's doing this work, and it's a great process. So thank you.
Okay.
And the community stepping up.
Yeah, with
to
community.
provide feedback,
And
absolutely.
this can go up to the community, and so hopefully we'll get more feedback, and then we'll figure out this.
That's been impressive to see the community engagement responses and turnout.
Okay, well, with that, it is 9:12, and we reached the end of our agenda for this evening. And without objection, I'll call this meeting adjourned. And as always, you keep it classy, Lacey.
I almost said I have one more thing, but I didn't know if I get killed.
Yeah.